we are live, Mr. Warden.
Okay. Well, good afternoon, or good morning, I should say. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to, I guess it'll be afternoon at some time, but good morning, everyone. Welcome to Grey County Council for September 10th, 2020. Looking out the warden's window here, it's looking like a very gray day for Grey County, but sunshine is in store. So there you go. Madam Clerk, going to you with regards to roll call.
We have all members of council present, Mr. Warden.
Well, good morning and welcome again, County Council. We do have an agenda for our council portion of today's meeting. Is there any declaration of interest with the councilors? Okay, I hear none. If one does arise, you can declare it at that time. I have it moved by Councillor Hutchison and second by Councillor Mackey that the Grey County Council and Committee of the Whole dated August 13th be put on the floor. Are there any issues or any errors or omissions with regards to those minutes? All right, hearing none. Is anybody opposed to those minutes? Hearing none, those are carried. Okay, then moving forward then with our Board of Health, I have moved by Councillor Patterson and second by Councillor O'Leary with regards to the Board of Minutes. And I understand that Dr. Era is going to be in today to speak to those minutes. And welcome, Dr. Era.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Good morning, Council. The minutes, the two main highlights from the minutes of the last board meetings are as follow. One is related to the funding announcement. We received announcement for the 2020 calendar year from the Ministry of Health. Important notes for funding agreement that we have zero increase to the county portion of funding for 2020 and for 2021. The ministry has provided mitigation funding for these 2 years to offset the recent 70%, 30% funding split. Our funding is no longer segregated by program, which provide flexibility in utilizing the fund to address the local need during the emergency if there are certain programs that require more funding than others. Additionally, we have received an announcement that we will have funding for 9 nursing staff, public health nurses in schools. It was 6 at the time of the writing the minutes. Then there was an announcement to add 3 addition to the team. And we have actually started recruitment before the announcement based on projected need. So that 6 of the nurses were hired by the time of the minutes, and currently we have all 9 included in a team, and recruitment for new staff would continue. The second update, Mr. Chair, is related to school safe reopening and the efforts from public health, from school officials, from the parents and different stakeholders around the table. I feel confident we have invested sufficient amount of effort in safe reopening plans. There is communication with different stakeholders, and we will continue to monitor the situation, whether it's the epidemiology or the compliance and the collaboration among partners. I feel confident we have positioned our schools for safe reopening.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, Dr. Era?
Those are the 2 main highlights. There could be the issue of working with the 2 counties to draft potential bylaw to address mandating masks. However, the staff in the county can provide more detailed progress on this issue.
Okay, well, thank you for those updates. Any questions from County Council to Dr. Era?
I have Councillor Desai.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Desai. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. My question is to Dr. Era with regards to he mentioned the safe reopening of schools, and I understand that from a policy perspective or from an operational perspective, we can do a lot. We can do everything we can in order to ensure that the return to school is safe. At the same time, kids do have a mind of their own, and at times certain rules might just not apply anymore because, well, for one, the other kid had a Superman mask which was better than my Spider-Man mask, so I wanted to trade. So in the event that there is an uptick of cases, are we prepared to sort of go back in phases to I mean, we're phase 3 provincially now, but would the health unit be willing to sort of say, okay, well, we're going to go back to phase 2 restrictions instead of staying at phase 3 restrictions?
Dr. Era?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we have invested every ounce of energy to ensure we did our best to position the schools for successful reopening. However, I agree with your question, or the gist of the question, that we have to be very conservative when it comes to the health of children, when it comes to the health of the community at large. Any outbreak in a school would spill out into the community and vice versa. And there is so much redundancy and redundancy is a positive term in the safety plans. If the situation progresses to seeing more cases, possibly clusters, possibly outbreaks, we will adjust our approach accordingly. And if the group recalls, there were 3 different plans for reopening schools. One of them is complete return with the measures in place like we are right now. The second one, on the other side of the spectrum, complete closure of schools and remote learning, and a modified approach in the middle, which would entail 50% of class at alternate times. We would definitely monitor and continue to evaluate. I don't see a complete shutdown of the community or of the society similar to March and April. We have enough evidence, and it's accumulated from different jurisdictions and countries, that if we implement 5 measures, it will be sufficient to control the outbreak. The 5 measures, just for being complete, are watching our distance, washing our hands, wearing mask in crowded in indoor environment, avoiding crowds, and trying to use the outdoors more than the indoors whenever it's possible. So all in all, yes, we would have to be conservative and use any measure to ensure safety.
Okay, thank you. And, is there any follow-up there, Councillor Akash, Desai?
No further questions, Mr. Warden. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions to Dr. Era? Okay, Councillor Patterson, do you have anything to add as the Vice Chair of the Health Unit?
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I would like to add that Dr. Era is also looking after us with the resiliency training that's coming up. So just a reminder, that's on September 15. There's 2 half-day sessions, like one session in the morning, one in the afternoon. This is training similar to what the first responders receive, and recognizing that there's additional pressure on all of us, all our leaders, as a result of this pandemic, and stress management to assist us in serving our communities. So if you haven't registered, please do so. I think it'll be well worthwhile. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Councillor Patterson, for bringing that up, and I know I'm signed up for that, and certainly encourage others to do the same. I think Councillor Potter. Sorry,
Yes.
okay.
Councillor Potter and Councillor Gamble.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Potter, and thanks, Sue.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Warden. Yes, Doctor, at the last session you had, we talked a little bit about Christmas celebrations and outdoor community celebrations. And that has come up to me at the meeting of one of our business associations. So Do you have any advice yet regarding, we don't really have a parade, we have a gathering more than a parade. So I wondered if you have any advice yet, or any idea when you might have a better understanding of what controls should be put in place.
Thank you for the question, Dr. Era.
Thank you for bringing this issue up. We have a list of events coming up. One of them is Halloween, the other is the Christmas holidays. I'm going to just go wide and focus on the question. And we have our team has been preparing communication related to each one. It is a better practice actually to wait until 2 or 3 weeks before the event, because the epidemiology can change within weeks, and it will be a futile exercise to try to predict the different scenarios that could happen around that time. Specifically for the holidays, for Christmas and New Year's, these events are very important for the well-being of families and individuals. And no question, we would do our best to see how we can have a safe celebration of these events. Again, it's far in the future, relatively at this point, to predict what would happen. However, if I want to take an educated guess, I would say celebration outdoors would be quite feasible, quite manageable risk-wise. Indoors, family bubbles would be the best approach. However, we will have to see until we get closer to that point to make a definitive recommendation on them.
We can certainly celebrate Christmas outside with a Christmas tree and presents and okay, thank you for that.
It's a little
Councillor
cold.
Gamble? Yeah. Councillor Gamble, you had a question?
Yes, I've noticed the last week in online, there's been a couple of letters posted from lawyers who are saying that it's not mandatory to wear a mask. I'm just curious, how strong is that law if you took a notion to make it mandatory? I'm curious about what's going on.
Thank you for that. Dr. Era?
So the orders, the bylaws, and the letter of instructions that have been used in Ontario have been vetted by the legal counsel for each municipality or health unit accordingly. And there are a list of exemptions that are very wide in nature to address any health need or disability. And all in all, my understanding, and I'm not a legal expert in any way, my understanding from our legal that having the exemptions in place would allow many people to be comfortable saying no. And the order itself in Gray and Bruce has the best effort concept to it. That is to say, nobody will be escorted out of a business or refused entry based on the order. Rather, the best effort of reminder. These legal vehicles, whether order or bylaw, have been in nature educational, raising the awareness of the importance of the intervention. So I haven't heard of any situation where it went to a tribunal for a human right. And my understanding, again, and I'm not a legal expert in any way, that the complaint for human rights has to be associated with something related to the Human Rights Code, whether it's disability or something else. Just the mere fact that somebody doesn't want to wear a mask does not qualify as a human right. That's directly from our legal. However, I would, for anybody who's questioning the requirement or the potential of legal action based on these bylaws or orders, legal counsel is definitely warranted.
Thank you, Doctor.
Okay. That's, I mean, there's always somebody could challenge it, but I mean, that's what makes lawyers, I guess, have a job. Are there any other questions, Madam Clerk? Is there anybody else wish to speak there?
No.
All right. And again, as we move through this, and certainly with the schools back in order, that's going to be an interesting time as we move through this. And I know there's little bit of anxiety out there. But Dr. Era, I know you wrote a good letter there a few weeks back with regards to the going back to school, and I think that was very comforting for a lot in the sense of what you put together there for sure. And thank you for that. Seeing there's no other questions, again, the minutes were moved in second. Are there anybody opposed to those minutes? Okay, hearing none, that's carried. Moving on then to our agenda, item 6, bylaws. Bylaw 5091-20 was moved by Councillor Keaveney and second by Councillor Millen. And is there any questions to that bylaw? Okay, hearing none. Anybody opposed to that bylaw? Hearing none, that is carried. Okay, moving on to good news and celebrations. This is always a highlight of our county council. I'm going to start off with the Mayor of Chatsworth, Councillor Mackey.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Good morning, County Council. Good news. Well, September Labor Day weekend is over, so traveling on Highway 6 and 10 should be a little more safer and back to some normalcy with the traffic volumes. It's been horrendous, you know, for the summer for local travel on 6 and 10. Chatsworth Council will be having their first in-person meeting on October 7th. Our plan is to stage that at the fire hall to allow for a larger number of participants. So we're going to try to do that through the next 3 months, and you know, see how things go that way. But we can certainly separate ourselves, you know, at the fire hall and have a larger number of participants. I think we're going to, it's going to be a sign up for people that want to attend in person so that we can monitor, and it'll be on a first come, first served basis. And I think the maximum number of people that we can socially accommodate will be around 50. You know, typically we don't have that many attending council anyways, but so that's our plan for that return. Township office is open, and it's by appointment only, but people can come to the door if they're wanting to pay a bill, and the staff will let them in. So that seems to be working well, and I think that's the primary updates. Thanks, Mr. Warden.
Thank you, Councillor Mackey. And Councillor Gamble, do you have anything to add for Chatsworth?
Yes, I think Dr. Scott has said, Mayor Mackey has said that everything that's coming up. There's one thing is the Chatsworth Egg Society is doing a roadside gate demonstration display, I guess. And it's a competition, and we as a council have decided that we should be part of it. So if you're driving by the council office, you'll see part of it there. We're not quite complete yet, but hopefully we will be. So that's my part.
Okay, well, thank you for that. All right, and moving on then, Georgian Bluffs, Mayor Burley, do you have any updates from Georgian
Thank
Bluffs?
you, Mr. Warden. Good morning, everybody. Us in Georgian Bluffs are still living the dream. We look forward to our next challenge, which we have a few, which we're trying to resolve. Our council chambers has been open. We've had our meeting Wednesday night at Committee of the Whole. It was just totally amazing. We had our public meeting by video. We had over 15 participants and no problems at all. It was just amazing how great the staff had put this all together, and compliments to our staff. They just done an excellent job. Our facilities are going to be opening next week under strict protocols and so on, which is great. We look forward to the rain so we can all get out there, get fresh air, cutting our grass. Other than that, we're still living the dream.
And Councillor Burley, do you want to speak anything about the regional airport meeting that we had last week?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Warden. It was amazing thing to be set up again. We did have it at our Child League Arena, social distance and so on. I think it went very well. We had a great conversation with a all the key players. And I really look forward to having these conversations with county council as a whole, so we can really get into it and just see how we can all work together to make this facility work for the whole region.
Okay, well, thank you for that. Councillor Carlton, do you have anything to add for Georgian Bluffs?
No, nothing to add other than staff are working this week getting ice in out at Shallow Lake Community Center, so that'll be ready to go shortly. And yes, it was an excellent meeting about the airport. I was glad to see so many in attendance at that, so thank you.
Well, thank you for that.
Mr. Warden,
Sorry.
sorry, I have Councillor Body who has his hand up, so I'm not sure if he has a question. Good.
Councillor Body, do you have a question?
Turn, thanks.
Go ahead.
I can wait till my turn there, Paul.
Sorry.
He's going to wait.
Oh, you're going to wait. Okay, you just jumped.
Table. I'll wait for my turn.
You just jumped the gun there a little bit. Okay, that's fine. So excited. You're so excited, right? All right. Well, why don't I go to Owen Sound right now and get the highlights from Mayor Body? How's that?
You can, Paul, but you're going around the table, so I can wait till you go around the table.
No, it's okay. You go ahead. I can mix it up a bit.
Okay. I just want to share the good news that Councillor Gamble and I were out last week to Lee Manor. Brian's cousin Louise Gamble had been at a school in Taiwan called the Tam King Private School. Those kids at that school wanted to help Canada with face masks, and together they collected 16,000 face masks to be sent through here to Owen Sound to be shared with our long-term care workers in Grey County at our 3 homes. And it was really wonderful to meet with Louise in front of Lee Manor, also with Jennifer Cornell and Stacy Goldie from our facilities were there. So, you know, as we run into these issues, these big social issues, we've had great support from people within the community, great businesses. Certainly Bruce Power has provided a lot of masks and helped. You realize how big your community is when kids at schools in Taiwan are willing to help us here in Owen Sound and share some of the load and provide us with masks. So kudos to Brian's cousin Louise and everybody involved for helping us out and sharing and making our world a little bit smaller. So that's my only point. Everything's going well at the city for now. We hope we keep coming up with these 0 new cases throughout Grey and Bruce, and let the rest of the world tip when we apparently have an upswing in cases in the fall. But that's all for now. Thanks, Paul.
No problem, Councillor Body. And maybe you can forward the information and maybe get Penny to draft a letter from the warden's office also thanking that school.
Okay, we'll do.
Okay. All right. Councillor O'Leary, do you have anything to add to Owen Sound's great news?
Sure. Thanks, Mr. Warden. Just a quick update on the 10th Street Bridge. All of the rebar is in place and has been inspected, ready for a 12-hour continuous pour on Tuesday morning. And on that, after that pour, that puts the bridge on schedule to open in December of 2020. So that's good news. Thank you.
Maybe we'll have to have a Christmas party on that bridge, Councillor O'Leary.
So sorry, it's a small Christmas outdoor gathering.
Right. Corrected there. I still didn't get a comment from Councillor O'Leary, but very good. Okay, I'm going to go back to, thank you for that. I'm going to go to Hanover at this time and Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Just a brief update. It's always sunny in Hanover, and we are cautiously and slowly opening our Civic Center offices and our aquatic center. So that's what's on next steps for us, and that's it. It's sunny. Thanks.
Okay. Well, thank you, Councillor Patterson. And Deputy Warden Hicks, do you have anything to add to about Hanover?
Not much to add in terms of Hanover, but once again, I want to give huge kudos to the municipality of Meaford. I thought it was a one-off when I went to their memorial park, so I thought I would try it a second time. And it is an absolute gem. I stayed in a different section of the park this time, and equal service. Just a great place to visit. Thank you again.
Did you get the key to Meaford there, Deputy Warden?
No, but I'm lobbying for it. Can you tell 2 meetings in a row?
Well, you work on that. We'll see what we can come up with, Councillor Clumpus, for sure. Okay, well, thank you. And next, we will go to Meaford and Councillor Clumpus for a rebuttal there.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and thanks again to Councillor Hicks for the superb promotion of our Memorial Park. We are very proud of it, and it has changed its complexion a little bit this year for sure. We've got our shoreline rocked up, and it's safe there now. There's been a lot of activity there over the summer, and it is coming along. As is other construction, our library is progressing nicely with windows in and the siding up, looking like the inners are going to be in place very soon. Trowbridge Bridge is well in hand as well, and this I don't know if anyone knew that what we've done now is put another sidewalk on the, the north side, I guess, the lake side of Trowbridge. We only had the one sidewalk, but having this extension, and it's cantilevered off the bridge. So that'll be a nice addition for anyone leaving from the harbor and walking uptown. We're going to be holding our first in-person council meeting on Monday, and it will be at Meaford Hall with all due precautions. They will be live streamed and filmed as well by Rogers. Protocols are in place to allow the public to participate with pre-registration for delegations and presentations as well as questions. So that will be happening on Monday. We're anxious to see how that's all going to work out. We've certainly got the space in Meaford Hall. Speaking of Meaford Hall, sadly, over the long weekend, MIF was missed this year for the first time in its history. But the good news is that they are going to return virtually over the Thanksgiving weekend with films that will be, you can purchase tickets for, and you'll get the key to access that film, and complete with dinners for in-town patrons. So that will be a different experience for us all. Other than that, we've started films at the Thursday Flicks, Meaford Hall on Thursday the 17th, I believe it is. And again, they are pre-registered, pre-purchased tickets, and the patrons will be limited to about 50 people to start till we see how that goes. So things are beginning to happen with Meaford Hall, and we're all excited about that. We are looking forward to the county EMC meeting discussion on the 17th with regard to the termination of the emergency status, but we are holding the line and complying with everyone else closing at the same time throughout Grey County. And I think that's it for me at this point. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Councillor Clumpus, Mayor Clumpus. And what about the scarecrows? What's happening there?
Oh, unfortunately, the scarecrows, they had declared in early in the year that this would not happen this year, and that will be missed as well. We've had our major public attractions, of course, MIF and the Scarecrow Invasion. However, don't be surprised if you see the households that have scarecrows pop up in unusual places as you go through on your way elsewhere, perhaps, or stopping to have a look. There are some individuals who are mounting their own displays, but officially the Scarecrow Parade and activities, Family Festival Day will not happen this year. And they're in preparation for a major display next year, it being another banner year for them, record year. So wait till next year.
Okay, Councillor Clumpus, and we'll look for a scarecrow on that big red chair, though. Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Keaveney.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and good morning, everyone. And just a couple of events to add to Mayor Clumpus's discussion of what's happening in Meaford these days. Every year, our Meaford Hospital Foundation operates a 5K run walk. This year, that event has gone virtual, which means that people can do the 5K any way they wish, whether it's in a kayak or on a bike or rollerblading or any way that they would like to entertain that activity. And it is a fundraising event for our hospital, and people can just go online to the Meaford Hospital Foundation site and register and get pledges, and there's prizes and awards available for that event as well. And also our Meaford Chamber of Commerce every year hosts Meaford Dragons. And to date, this event has been the largest economic driver of business in Meaford, and 55 businesses at least have been kickstarted. This year, there is still an opportunity for anyone who is entertaining the idea of a new business or expanding their current business to register for the event. And there's support for people to help with their business plans and so on. Registrations are due by September 15th. The contestants then will be selected, and they will make their pitches at Woodford Hall on the 30th of September. And in December, the video of that event will be available to the public, and the winners will be announced. So it is a very exciting event for Meaford, and we're looking forward to it. And I congratulate the Chamber of Commerce for moving forward and making this happen this year. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Councillor McKeeveney. And I don't know if I mentioned this before, it's sad to see that the Meaford Outlet facility is, I guess, at the last stages of, I think, an online auction, and I understand that they're retiring. So a little bit of a hole there in Meaford that I'm sure you guys will figure out how to fill.
Well, we certainly hope so. That's a building of 100,000 square feet, which brought a lot of traffic into Meaford. And yes, we're going to miss it. We've lost a number of businesses these past few months, and it certainly is something that our recovery task force is aware of and working on. So yes, there are some retail spaces available in Meaford if anyone's interested.
Yeah, that was you go there and they just about had everything. Okay, well, thank you for that. And we'll move on to Southgate. Councillor Woodbury, Mayor Woodbury, welcome.
Welcome. Yeah, thank you. In Southgate, everything is sunny and bright. I actually got higher watt light bulbs because I don't seem to get out of the office in here looking at the computer too much. So that's how I got more sun. There's, like everyone else, a lot of the events for this fall are kind of up in the air, and I think everybody's just taking a breath after the end of summer and Labor Day and seeing how things are going. So things are going good here. We have some staff move back into the office, and everybody's functioning pretty good. We've got our building is, as everyone knows, is kind of in a bit of a flurry, and it doesn't look like it's going to let up. We're at the point now where with the amount of homes being built, businesses are starting to knock at the door. And we're also starting to run a little lower on industrial land. So things are going really good there. And everything is, like I say, sunny in the south here. So that's about it for me.
Well, it's
but
fair
Brian,
to say it's
Brian
fair to
knows
say,
lots of.
Okay, well, thank you, Councillor Woodbury. And it's fair to say you guys are pretty bright down there. Councillor Millen, there's your segue.
No, I was just going to say that building on what the mayor has said about all the building down here, we're thinking of building an airport to service all the businesses and folks that are moving to Southgate, and we look forward to discussions with the county to get them to pay for it. That's all I have.
Oh, well, that sounds like interesting discussion coming up. Thank you.
Oh, I have one more.
Oh, go ahead, Councillor Woodbury.
I don't know if this is the appropriate time. Heather can stop me if it isn't. But I was asked to give a quick just an update on the wrong time.
Yep, we're going to do that. That's actually on the committee of the whole agenda at the end of the meeting.
So I'm going to say something at some time, and it'll probably be at the right time when Heather tells me. So just to keep you in the loop.
Well, thanks for that update of when you're going to speak at the right time. Thank you. All right. So then moving on, then I'm going to switch over to West Gray next, and Councilor Robinson.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Warden, and good morning to everyone. I am kid-free.
Somebody's getting some feedback there. I'm not sure who that's coming from. Just hang on, Councilor.
I'll proceed then. Just a couple things happening in West Gray. I certainly want to mention I'm extremely proud of West Gray Fire and Elmwood Fire on the West Gray side. They received accreditation for their water tanker shuttle, so that definitely has a positive impact for the fire departments, but also on the community. Equally as exciting, I want to note that Grey Roots has featured a very beautiful Binko Brother thrasher from Neustadt. It was built around the 1890s. Check it out on the Facebook page. It's incredibly impressive. Our Durham Hospital will be hosting a virtual Boots and Bling fundraiser event. If you're interested at all, check out their Facebook page. In addition, the West Gray Municipal Office has been open. Office hours run from 10 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. But if you are needing our planning department or our building department, please call ahead and schedule a meeting, because those interactions take a bit more time. So we're planning those out through scheduling. And that's it for now from West Gray. Thank you, Warden.
Well, thank you, Councilor Robinson, and Councilor Hutchison. Do you have anything to add?
Well, good morning, Mr. Warden, and morning to everyone on line this morning. I think the mayor's highlighted everything. I can say that I'm very pleased to see the children back to school, because I have some grandchildren living with me during our renovation. So that was good to see them get out the door this week. But I think everything else has been covered by the mayor. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Councilor Hutchison. And I know I have a 15-year-old who went back this week, and he's been hanging around since March. So it was nice to see him go back for that reason. Nothing else wrong with that, but just it's nice to have a change for sure. Okay, going next then to the town of Blue Mountains, and Councilor Soever, Mayor Alar Soever.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Warden. We have everything is going well here. The number of cases, of course, the rest of Grey County is 0. So we are hosting an Oktoberfest next weekend. There's a couple of events actually, and the other event which precedes the Oktoberfest is the launch of our military heritage exhibit. That's at the Clarksburg Legion at 2 o'clock. There'll be a short presentation and displays highlighting the military heritage of the Blue Mountains, and that's being organized jointly by the library and the Legion. There will be a cash bar, which will help the Legion, who of course has not been able to generate any funds over the last while. Following that, there will be an Oktoberfest meal there in support of the Marsh Street Center. The Marsh Street Center is only one of 2 community centers in Ontario that are funded entirely by volunteers and the local population rather than the government. And so they, of course, have had to restrict their activities as well. So that's we're organizing an Oktoberfest, which will be the same as our successful Lobster Fest from last month. So there will be a sit-down component in the Legion parking lot, appropriately socially distanced according to the health unit rules. That worked quite well at the Lobster Fest. And then there is a drive-through component as well, where you can just drive by the community center and volunteers will put your Oktoberfest meal in the trunk of your car. So for all of those, you can The Oktoberfest, you sign up on the Marsh Street Center website. And the other one is organized through the library, and you can sign up through the library website. And I'll now turn it over to Councillor Potter for anything I might have missed.
Thank you, Councillor Schweber. Councillor Potter?
Thank you. Yes, things are continuing to go well in the Blue Mountains. And speaking of the Marsh Street Center, the really big news is that the Coffee Klatch restarted this morning. I was actually there last night, saw the setup. There are tables and chairs in the auditorium instead of the little room downstairs, but it means that people now can get together for coffee and have that little social time together that was such had become an institution of its own. Marsh Street Center also has some events coming up, including a pub night with the Harbottle Band. Some people may be familiar with them, and a few other things coming up. Our fall fair would have taken place this weekend, and like fall fairs right across Grey and Bruce and throughout Ontario, it had to be canceled. However, through the Craigleith Depot, you can actually attend a virtual display celebrating the 150 years. This would have been the 150-year celebration for our fall fair. So if you go online on the Blue Mountains Public Library website, go to the museum, and there you can view the online exhibit. And then, as the mayor said, the military heritage exhibit at the Craigleith, by the Craigleith Depot at the Legion, will be opening on Saturday the 19th. So lots coming up, and we're not even talking yet about the winter season, which is promising to be busy as well. So looking forward to all of it.
Okay, well, thank you for that, Councillor Potter. And leaving now Grey Highlands, I'm going to go to my Councillor Desai to start off, and then I'll finish up. Councillor Desai.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I was just taking a few notes here. Southgate mentioned they wanted an airport. All I'll say is, if you get an airport, be in Owen Sound, not a Georgian Bluff. We don't want to hear about it every meeting. And then second one I have here, it's not so much related to Grey Highlands, but more of a kudos to county staff. As we know, there's a report coming up in the Committee of the Whole where we get back into council chambers. I don't think there's enough words where I can express my gratitude to staff for bringing that forward. Zoom is getting a little tiring. And I mean, I'm out on the road, so it's also getting a little cold. So I'm looking forward to getting back into chambers. And yeah, thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, Councillor Desai. And just to finish up then from Grey Highlands' point of view is at our last council meeting, we had a request from one of our local public schools about picnic tables. So we were able to pull together, I think, around 15 picnic tables to be present on the grounds of the McPhail School in Flesherton to allow outside education opportunities. And so that's something that maybe others throughout the county could, think about. And while we have some good weather maybe coming up, that it was a request that was made, and we were able to pull from our inventory to at least accommodate that request. As you're probably aware, we're moving forward with our tendering of our new water tower for Markdale, which is one of those 1, 2, 3 things that we're moving forward within Grey Highlands, and especially Markdale itself. And also the moving forward of the other night at our Committee of Adjustment, there was a request, and it was granted to increase lands for the current school location of McPhail to be able to expand that land for the new build for a new school. So those things are sort of exciting and are moving forward in the sense of the continuation of growing Markdale, growing Grey Highlands, and growing Grey County in a respectful manner. So I don't know if there's any other comments or questions from County Council. We keep moving forward in Grey County for sure. Okay, Madam Clerk, do we need a motion for all that information?
We don't, but CAO Wingrove has a couple of comments as well.
Okay, thank you. Well, there you go. Madam CAO, welcome.
Thanks, Mr. Warden, and good morning, County Council. since this is good news and celebrations, I just wanted to take a minute and recognize some of our staff for some recent really special achievements. First of all, the Association of Municipal Managers, Clerks and Treasurers of Ontario, which you would know as AMCTO, has advised that our Deputy Clerk, Tara Warder, has achieved her Accredited Municipal Professional, or AMP, designation. For those of you that are familiar with this, it's a tremendous amount of work, and the fact that Tara was able to do this and demonstrate the level of knowledge and competency that's required across all 5 subject areas while working and while having a little one at home, I think is really a wonderful achievement, and really speaks to her dedication and commitment to growing her knowledge. So congratulations, Tara, on that.
Congratulations, Tara.
Yeah. And then the second, and there's actually 2 staff that I wanted to recognize here. Some of you may have seen this. The Ontario Professional Planners Institute, OPPI, recently announced the recipients of their Member Service Awards. And the Member Service Awards are something that OPPI puts out to recognize the service and contribution by members back to the profession. And I was so pleased to see 2 names that you all know really well. One was Liz Buckton from Meaford, and the other was Scott, our own Scott Taylor. So, you know, kudos to them. They've both done so much to try and, you know, connect the planning profession back into the schools. Think of Scott and his Lego work, and Liz with all of the work that she does on continuing education and helping the planners with their in-service learning. So we're so fortunate to have such great folks on our teams, and congratulations to Liz and to Scott.
Thank you for that, Madam CEO. And maybe I'll take this opportunity to also thank you through all this new territory of COVID-19 and your leadership as the CAO and guiding us as county council and staff in the county. And again, thank you for everything that you have done as well. So,
thank you.
Okay. Good. Well, it must have been Mr. Taylor's wit that really put it over the top, right? So very good. Well, that's good. Okay, so moving forward, then we have one more motion, and that was moved by Councillor Burley. Sorry,
Mr. Gordon, if I could interrupt, it's Councillor Potter. And something very important that we missed, and that is to congratulate Joan McKinley on winning the Tommy Cooper Award for Agriculture. She is from the Blue Mountains. She and her husband James are part of a long-standing family farming operation in our town, but their impact goes well beyond our boundaries and even well beyond Gray and Bruce. So we would be remiss not to make note of that.
Well, thank you for that, Councillor Potter, and you're very well right to say that their roots run real deep in the agricultural part of Grey County, and when the OMAFRA office was in Markdale there at that time, Joan worked out of that, and originated from Guelph, and certainly I'm sure she's advised a large number of farmers and others, with advice when she was there, and her long history of agriculture, along with James and their hard work they do in the farm and everything they do. They certainly are very hard workers for sure. Thanks for bringing that up. Okay, so then I have an adjournment by Councillor Burley and Councillor Hutchison with regards to the council meeting as of today. Is anybody opposed? Hearing none, that is carried. All right, just take a second here to move over to their committee of the whole. And that would, I'm going to say that was, Madam Clerk, 10:20 is when we adjourn then. So then moving over to our committee of the whole meeting of September 10th, call that to order. And there is a printed agenda for everyone who had an opportunity to look over. Is there any pecuniary interest with regards to councillors today? Okay, if one does arise, you can declare at that time. So we have a consent agenda in front of us. And let me go to my So the consent agenda has been moved by Councillor Millen and second by Councillor Carlton. Are there any of those items that wish to be pulled for separate discussion later on in the committee of the whole meeting? Anything, Councillor?
Mr. Warden?
Yes, go ahead.
I'd like to have some more discussion on I believe it is. It's the accessibility minutes, Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee minutes.
Okay, so that's item H. So,
H.
Yep.
Thank
The
you.
Joint Accessory Advisory Committee minutes dated August 25th.
That's right.
Okay, I'll mark you there. Okay, I'll ask one more time. Are there any other items wish to be pulled for separate discussion? Okay, seeing none, and that has been moved and second. And anybody opposed to those that consent agenda? Okay, hearing none, that is carried. All right, so moving forward then, let me just get my papers here. So our first item for discussion is the Social Services Relief Fund, and Anne Marie is going to speak to that, and that is moved by Councillor Hutchinson and seconded by Councillor Woodbury. And I'm going to welcome Anne Marie to speak to a report. Welcome.
Good morning, Warden. Good morning, Council. This report is just a summary on the social services relief funds that we received back in April, and then some planned projects for some more funding we have received from the province. So back in April, the province put out a social services relief fund through our CHIPPY program, our Community Homelessness Prevention Initiative. And the funds were to go to agencies and community members that are working with people that are experiencing homelessness or vulnerable people within our community. The county received $2.3 million. On page 42, I have provided a list of the money and where we have allocated or spent the funds. The funding came in 3 separate allotments. We received a payment in April, one in July, and we'll be receiving another one for September. To date, we have received $1.7 million, and we have about $46,000 remaining. And actually, since I wrote the report, we've actually had some more requests come in, so probably less than that right now. There have been a number of great community initiatives that have helped with the increase in demand that we're seeing in our community. One of them I'm going to mention is OShare. OShare served 32,219 meals between March and July, and compared to last year where it was 8,700 meals. So very much a need for food security in our community. We have assisted with costs of food. We've assisted with some new freezers there, and we've also provided some funds for modifications so that they can modify the site and get ready for the winter so that there can be takeout food provided. Right now, people are lining up outside. This will give the ability for some sort of an assembly line kind of thing inside so people can get in out of the cold and still be provided be provided some food. We still have our isolation center set up. We do, just in case there might be a second wave, and we do have some funds allotted for that. We've been working with the United Way. We have a weekly meeting with Public Health, Grey and Bruce counties, the Poverty Task Force, and other agencies. And out of those meetings, there's been a number of issues and gaps for service that have been identified. And the United Way has been able to provide some of those services. Providing meals to people that were isolating in motels was certainly, or there for emergency housing was certainly one of the main things they've done. They provided 2,548 meals, and they worked with Habitat for Humanity in order to deliver those meals. There's been lots of work for supporting frozen meals being provided through Southeast Grey Services, masks for the backpack program, and other PPE for some of our agencies that are providing services. Emergency housing, we funded $113,000 in emergency funding from April to July of 2020 versus $32,000 for the same time period in 2019. So we're certainly seeing a lot more people that were needing housing and needing to be housed for a longer period of time. So that also contributed. We are funding a reception center for the Canadian Mental Health Association. We're providing $150,000 in funding for a full-time staff person for mental health outreach services, for rent supplements, and for the cost of the center for a year. Again, large increases in demands for services. The wait list for transitional housing has grown by 75% just compared to March of this year, and the waitlist for outreach services by 625%. So again, a need for more funding when it comes to staffing and when it comes to services. So the province had announced in August phase 2 of the social services relief funds. And these funds are to go to mitigate risk for vulnerable people in congregate care settings. So that's where more than one person is sharing a room. To encourage longer term housing solutions for those that are experiencing homelessness, and to enhance rent assistance to households with rent arrears due to COVID-19. There is concern with the province and with ourselves that once CERB is no longer, that there will be people that still will not be back to work and therefore will not be able to pay for their rent. So the province has provided some funds. Now, the amount of money that we received a conditional allotment for $793,000, conditional upon a business plan that is going to be approved by the province. It is due tomorrow, so it will be submitted after our meeting today. And it is to look at what are some of those challenges within your local community. Some of the challenges we're seeing in Grey County is, again, securing long-term housing after emergency housing. We're seeing, because there's that lack of traditional or supportive housing, we're seeing a lot of people that are congregating and living with multiple people in units, or they're just not being successful at maintaining their housing. We're seeing a demand in community services, so obviously a need for staffing, and we have been able to provide the Y Housing and also CMHA with extra staffing through our first set of funds. So what we're proposing for the second set is looking at providing some of that transitional housing. We have 3 housing proponents that we've been working with in the past, just so that if there were a possibility of funds coming available for transitional housing, that we would be shovel ready or renovation ready, I guess is in this case. And we do have 3. We have Mem Wim Win, which is one of our nonprofits. They've partnered with Mawickedon Native Cultural Center and CMHA to provide 3 units of transitional housing. They currently have a house that will be transformed into 3 individual units. Each person would have their own bedroom, but they would be sharing some of the amenities such as kitchen and common areas. We also have the Women's Center, Grey Bruce. They are looking at, currently they have second stage housing in which the county funds, and they have 10 family RGI units. We're looking at transforming one of the townhomes into 2 separate self-contained units for single women that are experiencing domestic violence. Unfortunately, the family units in the last few years are not always full. There are a couple of vacancies each month. And yet there's been a huge increase in the number of single women that are needing the supportive housing. So this would make total sense moving forward, even out of COVID, for the area. And the last one is Lutheran Social Services. They currently are a nonprofit and have 78 apartment building, and they also have a number of other buildings. And they're wishing to convert one of their buildings into 4 self-contained apartments for transitional housing. And they would be working with ourselves and with CMHA for supports. And we're also allotting some funds, $175,000 approximately, to the rental arrears program, which would hopefully help about 50 households that would have rental arrears up to $3,500 a month. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Well, that's a great report, Anne Marie, and a lot of great stuff in there. So any questions from county councilors?
Councillor Millen and Councillor Mackey.
Okay, so go ahead, Councillor Millen.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and indeed, Anne Marie, that's a really good report. Just demonstrates all the good program, or a lot of the good programs that are in place to help folks that are struggling with the pandemic and other issues in day-to-day life. My question is I see we expensed some money to the Southwest Ontario Aboriginal Health Access Center. Where is that?
That is in Owen Sound.
Oh, it is in Owen Sound.
It
Okay,
is in Owen Sound.
I wasn't aware of
Yeah.
that. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for that. And Councillor Mackey, I think you had a question next.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Warden, and thanks very much, Anne Marie. It's really nice to see the amount of support that's being given to the people that are in dire need right now. Just looking at the list of food banks and outreach programs that have received money, did we reach out to all of those programs across Grey County? And if we haven't, is there a way for ones that are missing from that list, who should they contact to try and access some of the money that's still remaining? Thank you.
Certainly.
Anne-Marie?
So food banks themselves were provided funds from a different ministry. So there were some funds, but some of the programs that provide meals are not necessarily listed as a food bank. So we have been providing funding. So for instance, Food Share or OShare is not a food bank. Some of the Salvation Armies and other areas that are a food bank received funds from a different pot from the province. But if anybody, any social agency out there that's dealing with vulnerable populations does require, they can reach out to the county and we can certainly work with them. And we did put out a call and we certainly put out a call to all of our partners that we're aware of that work in Grey County that work with vulnerable populations, and we'll continue to do that. There are some funds still coming for September, so if there is need out there, we do have some funding remaining.
Okay, great for that question. Councillor Robinson, I think you're next.
Mr. Warden.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
So Anne Marie, thank you. Anne Marie, you mentioned contact the county. Who would the contact person be?
You could contact Josh Gibson.
Thank you.
Thanks for that information. That's great to have that passed on. Okay, Councillor Robinson, you're next.
Well, thank you. And through you, Mr. Warden, certainly we're appreciative of the social services relief funds and everything that Anne Marie and your staff are doing for our community. One of the highlights of your very comprehensive report was the 75% increase to the wait list for affordable housing. I wonder if you could just clarify and make sure I wrote that down properly. And also in terms of being able to drill down a little more on that, is there, what more can we do to address this increase in the wait list? And is there other programs that we should be looking at? Thank you, Anne Marie and Warden.
Thank you for that question, Anna Marie.
Thank you. So the 75% increase was actually to Canadian Mental Health Association waitlist, and that is for supportive housing. So that would be working living and working with one of their programs. So they have housing in which a person can receive daily supports, weekly supports, whatever might be required in order to enable them to maintain their housing. So that was the 75% increase. Surprisingly, our housing has stayed fluid. We haven't had a huge jump in affordable housing. That could be because of the CERB right now that is available. So we'll see what happens when that's no longer around.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you for that. Those are good questions. Are there any further questions to Anne Marie's report?
Yes, Councillor Potter.
Okay, Councillor Potter.
Thank you, Warden. Anne Marie, thank you for this report. It fills in a lot of blanks for me. I have had a lot of questions from ratepayers about this very subject in recent weeks. Everybody seems to know somebody who needs assistance in some way or another. So I just wonder, I know we try to communicate what services are available, and are there any is there anywhere I can direct people? I know I can direct them to the website, but I just wonder if there are any materials available that people can get their hands on that explain how the services work, who they should get in touch with, how the provision of services is divided up in terms of the county and local municipalities and the province and so on.
Certainly. So if they're looking for local services in the town of Blue Mountains, Beaver Valley Outreach would probably be somewhere you could direct them. They have a number of local services and we do provide funding and assistance with them. And Beaver Valley Outreach could also then provide information on our services and get in touch with us or help the individual apply for some of our services too. So they would be an excellent resource for your area.
Okay, that was my guess, and so that's where I will direct them. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other further questions from County Council? Okay, this was moved by Councillor Hutchison, second by Councillor Woodbury. As I mentioned before, is there anybody opposed to this report? Hearing none, that is carried. Okay, thank you for that. We'll continue on with one more again. And so the next one we have is TRCW 0920, and this is with regards to County Road 19 and 21, and it was moved by Councillor Mackey and second by Councillor Keaveney. And Matt, I think you're going to take this report forward. Matt?
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and good morning, Mr. Warden and councillors. I'm presenting this report on behalf of the director, who is remote at the moment, but he's possibly listening in if he has cell reception, so he may be able to jump in if something comes up that needs to be specifically answered that I can't handle, but we should be able to make it. Anyways, this report makes a recommendation that committee and council can direct staff to negotiate a cost-sharing agreement with the town of Blue Mountains regarding a water pumping station that's in conflict with some intersection improvements that we're proposing or have been proposing for quite a few years, actually, which this report will kind of get into at Gray Roads 19 and 21. And we're also going to give you an update on the project status. So to that end, a brief chronological outline of the chain of events to present day. Gray County, along with Simcoe County, town of Blue Mountains, they started preliminary planning for an intersection improvement at the junction of 19 and 21, which is also Simcoe Road 34, with Collingwood on the east side of that road. The project's fairly complex. It involves some property acquisition. There's developments taking place in the area. There's significant utility relocations, including the pumping station. And there's multiple stakeholders, kind of as I noted. At that time in 2011, basically a roundabout project was placed on the multi-year capital construction plan, and that was what we were going to move forward with. That, again, was in 2011. The following year, in 2012, the project had been reduced in budget on the capital plan and was slated to be a signalized intersection at that time with auxiliary lanes. That was due in a large part to budgeting constraints, and at that time there was a lot of focus on paving surface treated roads within the county to bring them up to a county standard. So that dug into things. 2014 class environmental assessment reinforced the decision to signalize the intersection, and a recommendation to do that was contained in that report. Then in 2015, the intersection was scheduled to be signalized, as you know, it was outlined to be in the environmental report and the original recommendation, and it was on the 2017 multi-year capital plan. Things changed again in 2018 when Gray County and Simcoe counties met to discuss addressing a significant growth in the Collingwood and town of Blue Mountains area. And the successful completion and operation of roundabouts in Simcoe County and other jurisdictions triggered the reopening of the environmental assessment at that time. And once again, looked at the feasibility of a roundabout at that location. To bring us to today, the proposed roundabout is being planned. It's at 90% completion and design. And it's proposed to go to tender and construction in 2022. The project's dependent upon significant utility relocations taking place in 2021, which includes hydro, gas, and the water pumping station, which is the town of Blue Mountains. It's an asset of theirs. It's estimated that the pumping station, the relocation, will be in the $1 million plus range. So it's a significant investment to have that moved to accommodate the roundabout. Additionally, with all that going on, there's additional system expansion and upgrades planned for the Grey County Road 19 corridor through the area, as noted in the report. The attached figure that we have in the report kind of lays that out very clearly, I think. And I have to thank Trevor Arden, who was on our staff, for putting that together, because I think it's a great illustration of what's happening. The financial plan to accomplish the expansion and upgrades is also noted in the report. So I want to thank you for your consideration and open it up to any questions or comments.
Thanks, Matt. And it's interesting how things keep changing through time. Okay, questions from county councillors. Are there any questions? Madam Clerk, is there anybody indicated?
Nothing that I can see, Mr. Warden.
Okay, well, it's just, it was a pretty good. Yes?
No, if I might.
Oh, Councillor Allard, go ahead.
Yes, my hand option was a little not working. So, yeah, I'd like to thank staff for this excellent report. And certainly this is a very important project for the town of Blue Mountains. There's obviously there's a big need there. During peak times, traffic is backed up well into Collingwood. And it's a prime example of where we need our integrated regional transportation study, because Collingwood is moving forward in their transportation plan with 4-laning Mountain Road, which, you know, obviously has an impact on what we're doing. And, you know, they're going to bring all the traffic to the circle. And then, you know, obviously we need a traffic circle to accommodate it, and then the downstream roads. But there was very little consultation on that with us. So I'm happy to see this thing proceeding with the cooperation of both counties. I just have one question. The way the schedule is worked out, we're going to do the main roundabout first. And obviously there's the complication of having to move the pumping station. But might it not be wiser to do the downstream roads first, like continue from the west to the east, so that, because once we put the roundabout in and Collingwood has the 4-lane, we'll then be constructing the downstream roads once that major artery is available. Whereas if we started at the west end with the project and worked our way back to the east, we would already have the 4-lane section of 19 to 119 in place when we get the roundabout, which will enable the traffic to get there. So what I'm worried about is looking at how this is scheduled. We're going to be stuck with a very narrow road under construction once the roundabout is done. So that's going to just prolong the traffic problem. Whereas if we could start at the west end and work our way back east, we would have, you know, the roads to take the capacity of the roundabout immediately when it's completed.
Okay, Matt, that's a long question there, but
yeah, I can speak to the fact that I'm not aware of exactly what the timing is for Collingwood's 4-laning of Mountain Road. We are planning on having 19 between 119 and 1921 intersection 4-laned in 2023. But the rationale right now behind not going from west to east is that we have all the components in place at the 19 and 21 intersection with environmental assessments, which take, as I think you're all aware, a significant amount of time. There's a significant amount of consultation with the public and agencies and whatnot. And that consultation or that process has just started from the west on that section of 19. So we're kind of, the order it's going right now is dependent on the way that things have fallen into place. So that is taking place now, but it'll be at least 1 year off before we get the environmental assessment in place to do that 4-laning. So that's the reason for that. And ideally, the Mountain Road 4-laning, if it takes place next year, you know, there's going to be a lot of conflicts and interactions going on there. But if it's 2 years away, we should be right in the window.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else? Everything else okay there, Councilor Swerver? No further?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I think, I know my question to you, Matt, when we talked about this other day, is you're going to try to do as much as in the shoulder seasons as possible to try to keep away as best you can, right?
Yeah, as far as staging goes, we will definitely try to avoid the high peak volume times in the summer and in the winter. Obviously, the winter there will be work probably taking place in the winter. It'll be utility relocations and whatnot initially leading up to it, but that would be our goal. Obviously, there is going to be conflicts with traffic and with residents, and it's the nature of construction, as we all know. But definitely, it is forefront in our minds that we will try to make it as easy on everybody as possible.
Thanks, Matt, for following up with that. Other questions then from county councilors? Anything, Madam Clerk? No? Okay. No. So again, that was moved in second. Is there anybody opposed to that report? Hearing none, that is carried. I'm going to suggest we do, you want to do one more report or do you want to take a break? What's the wish of everyone? Carry on? Okay, let's do one more report and then we'll take a break then. Okay, so moving on then to the next report. This is from Heather, and this is with regards to the procedure bylaw changes. And this is moved by Councillor Patterson and seconded by Councillor Woodbury. And I'm going to pass this over to our clerk, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. The report topic I think will be familiar to many council members because I suspect a lot of your clerks have or are bringing a very similar report to your councils for consideration. With Bill 197, it amended several acts, including the Municipal Act, to allow for electronic participation for members of councils and local boards outside of a declared emergency, should municipal councils wish to do it, and it is optional. Currently, Grey County's procedural bylaw does not permit electronic participation outside of an emergency, except for subcommittees where the majority of members are public members, such as the Accessibility Advisory Committee. While there's been a few technical hiccups, overall, electronic meeting participation has gone relatively smoothly and allowed the work of Grey County to continue during the pandemic. There are some considerations that council will need to think about related to permitting electronic participation for all of council, committee of the whole, and all of our subcommittees and task force meetings. Those include the frequency, so how many times a member can participate electronically during normal circumstances and extenuating circumstances, such as a pandemic or weather-related issues. Would it be one meeting day counted or on a per meeting basis? And would allowance be given for a member to participate electronically for a longer period of time? So a one-off meeting versus 2 or 3 months where they're allowed to participate electronically, perhaps for illness, perhaps for other reasons. Quorum, is it necessary to have quorum in person in the council chambers, or is it acceptable to have quorum as members of council participate both in person and electronically? Right now, outside of a declared emergency, members participating electronically are not counted in quorum. These changes will permit members to be counted in quorum. Notification, it would be staff's recommendation that anyone wishing to participate electronically notify the clerk as soon as possible in advance of the meeting so that we can ensure technology and invitations are sent out promptly. And we're recommending that that this apply to across council, committee of the whole, all of our subcommittees and task forces. So at the end, I'm looking for some feedback from council on some of those items so that we can include those in the procedural bylaw amendment that we'll bring forward to the next meeting. The other thing included in Bill 197 was proxy voting. And this would allow a member to give a proxy for voting to another member in their absence. It's my understanding that this was more implemented for the local municipalities who are unable to appoint alternate members to their councils. As council is well aware, every municipality in Grey County has appointed an alternate. So we do have 9 alternate members that can attend county council should a mayor or deputy mayor be unable to attend. And when they attend, they have all the rights of a regular member, including open and closed sessions, weighted voting, etc. An alternate member is unable to, if they're unable to attend, they are not able to appoint a proxy. If they are appointed, it's my understanding, and I'm actually waiting for confirmation from Ministry of Municipal Affairs. If they're appointed under Section 267 as a long-term replacement for illness, etc., then they are able to appoint a proxy. And again, I'm just waiting for confirmation on that. Proxies are not counted in quorum. So if you're providing a proxy to another member, as much as they have your vote, your attendance is not counted in quorum. So right now, it's staff's recommendation that proxies not be implemented at Grey County Council, but that's certainly up for council's consideration. So just looking for some input from council on items to be considered within the procedural bylaw amendments related to frequency, if that's something that you want to put a limit on, and quorum, if you're wanting to have in-person quorum, or if it matters to council whether we have 10 people in council chambers or whether we participate electronically as we do now. So I'm open for those questions.
So just for a couple of clarity points before I go to questions from the councillors. So in the sense of quorum, currently right now, we're all working remotely, and it's brought together through a Zoom format that puts everybody on the screen. And as myself as the warden, I can see everybody and that type of thing. If we move into the new hybrid, where we are back in county council, but some are able to work remotely, how does that, do we have to change our video process that's watching everybody, or do we still do the Zoom in council chambers? I know, like you're talking about the next report coming forward. How does the viewing public and how do the chairperson and others, how does that break out, where before, when we were council chambers, the camera would sort of zoom to whoever as they were speaking and it sort of had a bigger picture. But if somebody's working remotely, would there be just another square on the bottom that would show them? I guess that's the first question for clarity.
So through you, Mr. Warden, actually, Rob and I are going to be meeting with our audio video provider tomorrow, CTRE, to go over those, to make sure that our systems interconnect properly and that we can see people participating electronically. The public can see those through our live stream, but also those participating in person in council chambers. So we will be working through all of those technical issues with CTRE.
So just to finish, I think that's the very most important part of somebody is working remotely, that people can still see that they are present.
Absolutely.
And that maybe rolls into that part about the quorum part that shows that. And the other part, you were trying to get some feedback on the number of times people could use that remotely. So I'm going to go to questions. I think Councillor Millen, I think you maybe showed first indication you wish to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Yeah, my own personal opinion is that it shouldn't matter how many times you want to participate. If for instance, remotely participating council is being included in quorum, then it shouldn't matter whether you're remotely or how many times you are remotely or in person, at least in my opinion, because your vote counts the same regardless of where you're situated. I certainly agree with not supporting the proxy. I just foresee a real mess with proxies. That wasn't the first word that came to my mind, but a mess would catch that. The other question I had was to the clerk was start time of meetings. Is that in the procedural bylaw or is that something outside the procedural bylaw?
Clerk?
I think it's in our procedural bylaw. I will just double check with that and keep going to questions if you would like, Mr. Warden.
So I guess the reason I asked that question is, and I recall, maybe, I don't know when that changed. It used to be 10 o'clock start. I'm just wondering what the rationale for that change was. And I'm wondering if we could go back to the 10 o'clock start. Certainly some councillors at the southern end of the county would, at least myself, certainly appreciate the extra 30 minutes to get to Owen Sound. I know not everybody feeds cattle or have chores, but particularly in the wintertime, it's those 30 minutes could be well appreciated. Thank you.
I hear what you're saying, Councillor Millen. Go ahead, Madam Clerk.
Just in response to the procedural bylaw time, 3.2 of the procedural bylaw says council will meet on the established dates and times. So it doesn't have a specific time in there, and that would be determined by council and in coordination with the clerk, CAO, and the warden.
Thank you.
So just for further part of that, Madam Clerk, if Councillor Millen was wishing to change it, how would his process be on changing that? Would that be a notice of motion, or would that be something through this discussion?
It would be a discussion. It came about when we went to Committee of the Whole, because the meetings were going to be longer. They were all-day meetings and starting just that half an hour earlier. And this was after a survey put out to members of council at that time on starting at 9, starting at 9:30, or starting at 10. And 9:30 seemed to be the middle ground and most supported by council at that time. And should council wish to amend that time, then a notice of motion would be more than appropriate.
Thanks for that clarity. And anything else, Councillor Millen?
Just to follow up on that real quick, was I dare say the meetings for this term particularly have been somewhat more efficient in their time than perhaps the last term. So if that is the procedure needed, then I would look into that myself. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, and thanks for those comments. Okay, Madam Clerk, do we have anyone else that wishes to speak?
Yes, Councillor Desai and Councillor Soever.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Desai.
Well, Councillor Millen stole most of my thunder. I agree with the points he's made, and those were the points I was going to make. Further, sort of trying to build upon the discussion we're having around the start time, I guess my question would be through you to the clerk as to why we cannot make that motion today. We are already discussing the procedural bylaw. So would it not be, my opinion is that it wouldn't be inappropriate for us to discuss other amendments to the procedural bylaw. And the reason I say that is that if a notice of motion is brought forward today, it won't be discussed until next meeting, and it won't be ratified until the meeting after, as opposed to if the amendment is directed, or staff is given direction to make that amendment today, it can be part of the bylaw that comes to the next council meeting in 2 weeks. And then the first council meeting in October, when we're all expecting to be in council chambers, we can actually be starting at 10 instead of 9:30. So I guess that becomes my question, is why can we not give direction to make that amendment today? Thank you.
Madam Clerk.
So we are making amendments to the procedural bylaw today based on Bill 197. So that is electronic meetings and proxy voting. The procedural bylaw actually doesn't specify a time that we begin our meetings. It just is established meeting dates and times.
Don't put yourself on the spot here.
It's okay. That's all right. Because we're strictly speaking to changes to Bill 197 and electronic meetings and proxies, and the time is not specified in the procedural bylaw, it really wouldn't be an amendment to the procedural bylaw per se. It's just a change in practice.
So still the process would be a notice of motion to
That would be my recommendation.
And I guess in a little bit of fairness, I know maybe this term of council wasn't pulled like the last term of council, but I think the explanation was said that because of the new format, that was sort of how it was set and that sort of thing. Just one other comment with regards to the time. I guess if we make changes that is being suggested here in the procedural bylaw, if there is one of those aha moments where timing is an issue and you don't have the time to drive here, you could always do that remotely from home as well. So you could save that time, which gives that extra flexibility if there is that ha-ha moment first thing in the morning of however that is. But that's just for some information. Okay, Councillor Swever.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Warden. I'm in favor of people being able to attend remotely, but there should be some guidance on that. I'd hate to think that a person could go away for the entire winter and attend from Florida every meeting for the entire winter. So there should be some guidance on the number of meetings. Certainly, COVID's going to be around for a while, and anybody that is health compromised should be allowed to attend remotely. And I think it would be good to have some guidance on that, however, and not, I'd hate to get to a point where, half a council is attending from Florida. This is a responsibility we all take on when we become mayors and deputy mayors, and people expect us to be there. And although this has been working quite well, the virtual meetings, it is always good to have that personal connection as well, with having the meetings in person. The other thing, we are looking at the same thing at the town of Blue Mountains, and it seems that there may be, we have to solve the technical issues with doing hybrid meetings, because when you're in the council chamber, the potential for feedback and time delays and things is, that's something that our staff is working through with our IT department. So, if we decide to go that way with hybrids, then we'd certainly appreciate anything the county learns, and we'll tell you what we learn as well, because that seems to be the main stumbling block. One of the solutions could be that everybody wears a headset at the in-person meeting, but that doesn't seem to be very popular either. So that's all I have to say.
Okay, well, thank you, Councillor Swever. And I guess to you, Madam Clerk, obviously maybe the 443 other municipalities are dealing with this as well. And through your Clerks Association and that, are you getting any feedback from I guess it's early days of what other municipalities are doing, or some of those addressing some of the questions that has been raised this morning?
So I have surveyed our Grey County clerks, and I've heard also from some of the county clerks around the province. A lot of them are moving to electronic participation and really sorting out this very similar questions to the discussions we're having today about how many quorum is achieved in person, or just through a combination of virtual and in person. So some of those questions, it is really early days, because this just came out when the province ended their emergency declaration and made amendments to the Municipal Act. So they really are discussions that are happening now. As far as the proxy voting, I haven't, and none of the counties that I've spoken with have supported that at this point in time.
I think you make a good example of the alternative county councilor sort of fulfills that point. Why would you? And maybe it's more geared to lower tiers versus counties as well.
Yes.
Other questions?
I have CEO Wingrove, and then I also have councillors Robinson, Mackey, and Carlton.
Okay, Madam CEO.
Thank you. Just to follow up on the comments Heather made about the need to coordinate what we're doing in the process in the procedures we want to put in place, with respect to the idea that people might go away for the entire winter and not be able to attend county council in person. My first thought was that your local requirements would likely preclude that from being an option for you. So, and And you are all so committed that I just don't see any of you doing that. But we will work, I think, to make sure that whatever we're trying to do here at county is in good alignment with what you're doing at the local level with regard to absences or remote participation.
You're absolutely right, Madam Clerk. We, or Madam CAO, we're ultimately responsible to the voting public as well. And they watch and see as well. And they may have a dim view. If you're remotely working for 6 months, they may think maybe that person's not really into their job, right? So,
I think so.
okay. Thank you for that, Madam CAO. Councillor Robinson.
Well, thank you, Mr. Warden, and I really appreciate this discussion, and also I appreciate our clerk for bringing this forward. I would like to see a hybrid of some sort where we can have the physical attendance of our members of council, but also the virtual attendance, and have that count towards quorum and also in voting. So I think that's something to take a look at. Also have this extended to our various committees. So long-term care, sustainability, affordable housing, just to name a few. I see the application for having remote participation of our committee members and members of council. I'm just kind of going through the list if I could, just by virtue of input. I would not want to see a limit on the number of times a member of council could participate remotely. Things come up, but as long as there's the justification for being in attendance, participating to your best ability, and voting, I think that that would be sufficient, at least from my perspective. The other comments, proxies, I'm not enamored by that in any way. I see a lot more of a hurdle with regard to that part of participation. We already have something in place, and the clerk has spoke to that in terms of the alternate for our representation. I'm wondering, so those are my comments. I'm looking forward to amendments to the procedural bylaw. Hopefully that supports these comments overall. But I wonder if our clerk could speak to the potential for delegations participating remotely continued in the fashion that we're seeing, and also what this all means to public participation or, you know, citizen involvement by way of watching our participation. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Councillor Robinson, and a couple of good points there, Madam Clerk.
Certainly, thank you. Very good points and good questions. So delegations have actually worked quite well virtually. And I think in the discussions with amendments to the procedural bylaw, we would have that option of either coming in person, because some are certainly just more comfortable attending in person once the building is back open to the public. Some are more easier. It's easier for them to appear virtually because they're coming from a far distance. So I think we would leave that optional in there. Certainly, we are going to continue to live stream whether we are virtual or whether we are in person. We record all of our council and committee of the whole meetings, and we live stream them as well, so the public is able to see those. And again, and you'll hear that in the next report from our CAO, when the building does open, we'll certainly be adhering to all of our open meeting rules and allowing public to access council meetings, both either through live stream or in person.
Okay, thank you for that. Next, I have Councillor Mackey.
Thanks, Warden, and thanks very much, Heather. It is a good discussion. I'll bite off the easy one first. My opinion on proxies, they would be very problematic, and I couldn't support proxies. As far as virtual participation, I want to get back to what is normal, and to me, normal was meeting in person. So I would certainly encourage all of my council colleagues to try and do their utmost to meet in person when that is available. I understand there may be circumstances where virtual attendance may be required, but I would hope that would be kept to a minimum. I just like seeing everybody together in one place. I think it's better democracy for us all, and hopefully we can get back to normal. Thank you.
Okay, well, thanks for that, Councillor Mackey. And Councillor Carlton.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. We had a similar discussion to this at Georgian Bluffs Council last night. And one of the things that our clerk brought forward was the purpose of having a minimum number of councillors in attendance would mean that with all our meetings being live streamed, you weren't looking at an empty council chamber with most of council being off-site. So there's a valid reason for making it look like more people are in attendance than, but still allowing for some to be coming in remotely. I would also respond to Councillor Robinson about the public meeting. We had a public meeting last night with about 15 members of the public responding virtually, and it worked extremely well. Our clerk had it well set up. It followed a sequence. She called on each person as it was their turn. They spoke and we could hear quite well. So it worked really, really well. So thank you.
Well, thanks for that, for those points, Councillor Carleton. And I've always thought that we all should have a cardboard cutout just to put there, just in case. You see it at the basketball game, they have the cardboard cutouts in the baseball. So just to have one as a councillor would, or I think would be just, can we put that in the budget, Madam Clerk? Right. Well, I think it's a good idea. I saw one in one of the Middlesex of a warden once, and it was, anyway, I won't go there. Any other comments or questions with regards to the report that the clerk is moving forward? I wonder, Madam Clerk, if you do maybe a little bit of a poll, maybe you need to get some more information, or do you think you've gained enough to move forward? Or
I think I have. I appreciate everyone's comments and insight. These are your meetings, so definitely we want to make sure that they work for you and that we still follow all of our requirements under the Municipal Act. So I've gained a lot of insight from here, from the discussion today, and I think that will help in drafting the amendments to the procedural bylaw, and we'll bring that forward at the next meeting. I do see Councillor Hicks has his hand up as well.
oh, you've spurred on some more excitement here. Councillor Hicks, Deputy Warden.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. No excitement here. I think the very good report, very good discussion. I'm with Councillor Desai on perhaps relooking the start time for our meetings. So I'll just say if he doesn't bring a notice of motion at the end of this meeting, then I will.
Okay, thank you for that.
Just for clarification, it was my idea, not Councillor Desai.
No one asked for a clarification, Councillor Milne.
Okay,
You're supposed to be recognized by the warden.
Okay, okay.
Mr. Warden, we have Councillor Potter, and I think Councillor Mackey had his hand up.
Okay, just before I go there, I got to tell the two individuals, both didn't get recognized by the warden. So you're both, okay, sorry, Councillor Potter
and Mackey.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Warden. Just my situation is that I do face an issue with health right now, pretty good. So I would be looking to attend meetings in person. And I wonder whether we've looked into the idea that perhaps someone should, I don't want this to, the idea of attending remotely just to become a convenience. I'm not sure that that's where we want to go. That it is a result of the COVID situation, and it is a result of trying to protect people. So if, you know, if we look at the mandatory mask orders, they do allow exemptions and allow people out for a good reason. And I wonder if we should look at it that way, which might answer Councillor Swever's concerns, that people just not use it as a way to be away somewhere. I would probably attend in person now. If, however, it becomes necessary, I would like the option to attend remotely if that is what's necessary to protect my health. And as far as the rest, 10 o'clock start time is great. And yeah, I'm not in favor of proxy voting either.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Potter. And I have Councillor Mackey, but I think Councillor Klumpus is also maybe wanting to speak as well. Is that, I'll go to Councillor Mackey and I'll look forward. Okay, Councillor Mackey, and then.
Thanks, Mr. Warden, for recognizing me. I just wanted to, Councillor Potter just really talked about what I was thinking. I don't want this to be convenience for people. You know, the expectation should be to attend in person. And you raised a good point, Mr. Warden, about, you know, maybe a survey should go out to all members of council with specific questions from the clerk. We've certainly done that before, and then we get feedback from everyone, because it is an important decision when we're talking about the procedural bylaw and moving forward. And the decision should be made based on, you know, getting back into the real world again. And, you know, if we're locked down, then we continue virtually, but, you know, getting back to the way things were is what we should all be striving for. Thank you.
Right, and thank you for those comments. I think Councillor Klumpus, I think you were indicating, and then I have Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Just to follow up with Councillor Potter's comments about personal situations, and mine is as a caregiver for the senior. And there are times when, you know, working remotely would be very, very beneficial in the sense of not being able to find care, you know, at the spur of the moment or something of that nature. So I am in favor of remote participation. I think that used judiciously, that can work both ways. Not in favor of proxy. I think that we all have a responsibility. We need to be there to share our vote and our opinions. In terms of the 10 o'clock start, it's I don't mind either one, although I do prefer the 9:30.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Thanks for those comments. And Councillor Robinson, I think you were wishing to speak.
Oh, certainly, Mr. Warden. And this is just a follow up to my comment. In terms of if council should change the procedural bylaw to allow electronic participation, the point that I was making is that it really would be a tool or a mechanism by which a member of council could still participate in the event that there is a need or that they're not able to physically be there, but still want to participate. And certainly Mayor Klumpus provided an example of that. I'd also submit that perhaps bad weather. Certainly we have bad weather that is very different in all of our municipalities. So that would just, this ability to participate electronically for reasons where we're just physically not able to get to the chamber would be most flexible, and I think it would achieve the results that we need. Thank you.
Okay, are there any other councillors wish to add some information here? And Madam Clerk.
Councillor Keaveney.
Okay, Councillor Keaveney, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and I've really appreciated this discussion, and I am also in favor of permitting the electronic participation on the occasions when, as Christine mentioned, when weather is an issue or when health issues are a concern. What I was going to suggest, I really like the idea for committee meetings, because we're all very busy people. Our schedules are full. And I think having the option to participate in committee meetings in particular could be beneficial if there are days when we are back to back or have conflicts. So, and I agree with the rest on the proxies. And certainly I'm looking forward to getting back to seeing everyone in person, and certainly encourage when possible for all of us to be together. But certainly I'm understanding of the needs for electronic participation from time to time. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Councillor Keaveney. And certainly getting back is certainly going to be looking at the next report, but no hugs for a while. Madam Clerk, is there anybody else that wishes to speak?
No, sir. If I could just provide some closing comments. I think the discussion has been excellent, and the opportunity to permit on occasion the electronic participation by members of council for the various reasons that have been stated today. You know, everybody, I think I'm getting that loud and clear, is really looking forward to coming back in person and participating in the chambers. But this does give an option in the circumstances where that is just not perhaps practical on that particular day or for a particular meeting, but they could still participate. So I'll work with our county solicitor and we'll draft some language for the bylaw amendments that would support that.
Okay, well, thank you for that, Madam Clerk. And I would think that if something else comes to mind from county councilors, they can sort of shoot you off an email or.
Absolutely.
You know, so there's that. And just a couple of things that do come to mind with regards to health reasons. And, you know, we're always told if you're not feeling well, don't go to work. And certainly that I think would also pertain to county council. And if you're, you know, don't feel up to it, but you still want to participate, at least you're not going to spread that, whatever you have or could possibly have, to other county councilors. I think we would all probably appreciate that, especially if we have any health confirmations or issues that we could have. And also I would think, and thinking back to Councillor Millen, in the sense of some of us do have an hour drive, and I know sometimes the weather can be vary throughout the county of Grey, and certainly if there's the ability to work from home versus risking your possibly life to get to a county council meeting, then there's that option as well. And I think the viewing public would appreciate that as well, in the sense of safety and those type of things. And we know how the weather can change fairly quickly as well. And so that's, you know, I think the viewing public would certainly would appreciate those parts of the flexibility there. So, okay, so this has been moved by Councillor Patterson, and it's been a while now we've been on this discussion, but it's been a good discussion. And Councillor Patterson and Councillor Woodbury. And is there any further comments or questions? As you can send questions to the clerk. Is there anybody opposed to this? Hearing none, that is carried. So there you go, Madam Clerk. You got your marching orders.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Yes. At this time, it's 11:22. Let's take a break. And do we want to come back at 11:35? That's almost 15 minutes or 13 minutes. Is that okay? 11:35? Okay, we'll take a break and we'll come back at that time. Hello, everyone. There we are. We'll get, I don't know, I just had this big screen in front of me. It just said we'll be back, and it stayed there. All right, everyone, we'll call this meeting back to order. And our next report is with regards to return to in-person meetings. And that's moved by Councillor Burley and second by Councillor Klumpus. And I think it's just a tag team between Kim and Heather. So I guess who's going to go first? Madam CEO, maybe first?
Yes, Kim, you're on mute there.
Welcome.
That doesn't work. Sorry about that. So following closely on the discussion that we just had about amendments to the procedural bylaw, this report gets into some of the more specific requirements for returning to in-person meetings. We're asking that council consider returning to an in-person council arrangement beginning on October the 8th of this year with appropriate protocols in place. And that, as we just discussed, the option for some counselors and staff to continue to attend virtually remain in place in accordance with the updated procedural bylaw. So starting next Monday, September 14th, is when we're going to open up the county administration building and our satellite offices to the public on a by appointment basis. A lot of work's gone into safety protocols to make sure that we can do this safely, both to protect our staff and also to the members of the public. To that end, you'll see in the report, there's a diagram that shows how the council chambers could be set up to facilitate the appropriate physical distancing, but still allow everybody to be in the room if everybody was actually attending in person that day. So you see how the counselors are spaced out around the horseshoe, and then other counselors are sitting in the row behind in the place where the senior management team, at the desk the senior management team normally occupies. Then there's some place in the gallery area for the senior management team. They can be in the room. They can also be watching the live stream from their desks. In the future, when we go to completely opening up the building again and having the public in attendance in council chambers, should they so choose, we'll have to look further at how to arrange that so we can have an appropriate public gallery as well as SMT as well as council. So this is really very much a work in progress. Heather mentioned that we will work with Communications Manager Rob Hatton and CTRE to ensure that the council chambers and the online Zoom can work well together so that people can see who's where. This will be some sort of a split screen arrangement as much as I know right now. But people need to see who's where and be able to call for questions and respond appropriately. We will continue to monitor the situation, working closely as we have with the medical officer of health to ensure that it's safe for people to be in the space physically present. And if we need to make changes, we'll communicate our concerns and considerations to all of you and act accordingly. I'm happy to take any questions. I feel like we had a good discussion on with the last report. So is there anything else I can help with this particular report?
Thank you, Madam CEO. And is there any questions with regards to what's been reported so far?
You see Councillor Potter.
Okay, Councillor Potter, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, just even maybe a suggestion. I wonder if it's actually more interesting for someone to look at the images that we're seeing now rather than a wide shot of a whole room where it's hard to tell who's actually speaking. I almost would think that this, even if we're all sitting in the same room, and I realize we'd have to have headsets to make sure we don't get the echoes, but even if we're all sitting in the same room, maybe seeing us in this sort of image would be more interesting for someone watching, and they would be able to understand us a little better. So I just wondered if we could look at that as an option.
Yeah, so having thumbnails rather than the wide shot of the room. It's an interesting idea, not one I'd thought of, and we'll bring that forward to the discussions with CTRE.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that was a question I was having, whether the camera could zoom in on the new placement of other, probably it could, Madam CEO, other than with the exception maybe with regards to where you're placing Councillor Body and Councillor Clumpus. I don't know if the camera could full, but that's something you're going to follow out.
Right.
Is there any other questions at this point from county councillors? Madam Clerk? All right. So is there anything else from you, Madam CAO, or are we moving to the clerk for further discussion?
I have nothing else to add. Kim has covered it quite nicely.
Okay, so basically this is moving forward. Oh, we have, so I got a note here from Rob Hatton that they should be able to zoom in on everybody. So I just got a note there on that. So that's good to know. So I guess, Madam CAO, this is, if this gets supported, this is sort of the plan, subject to, I guess, if there was something that changed, then I guess that would take precedence. And I guess it all depends in where we move forward with our declaration and in a number of points that, I mean, moving forward with this still allows us to keep our declaration in place if we feel that's,
Yes.
after the 17th and stuff like that.
That's correct. So at the next meeting, if we pass the changes to the procedural bylaw, then that facilitates us being able to move forward with this this hybrid model, if I can call it that. And unless something changes, we'll simply plan to begin to meet again in person on October the 8th. And I think when next we meet, we'll have a discussion about at what time.
Maybe. All right. And I think just in general, I will say from the warden's position, in the sense of, I think from the general public seeing us coming back, and I've caught that from others around the table, that it's probably, a bit of that, maybe that new normal that people are maybe sensing that, they like to hear. And I think that's probably a positive thing for the public, in the sense that they see that we're doing the social distancing and all the provisions in place. It leads as a good example as how we can do it safely and still move forward with our general business of life. And I think that's a good reflection of how best we can do it. Okay, so that was put on the floor. The motion, seeing there's no other discussion on the motion, anybody opposed to that motion? Okay, hearing none, that's carried. All right, so then moving on to item E, and this is with regards to delegation of duties update, and this was moved by Councillor Gamble and Councillor Hicks. And Tara, you're going to take this report. Madam Deputy Clerk. Madam Clerk, are we missing Tara there?
You're not coming. I can hear her because she's 3 meters away from me, but.
If I take my headphones out, does that matter?
I can't hear you still.
I can see you. So I guess, Madam CEO, this is an example of a maybe needing set of headsets, maybe.
That's correct.
Take your time, Tara. We'll wait. Something happened there.
Okay, how's this?
Yeah. Do you want to do a test 1, 2, 3?
Test 1, 2, 3.
There you go.
We'll get our computers on mute in here. sorry about that, everybody.
The floor is yours.
Okay, so the delegation of duties policy was last updated in 2018. The endorsement of the purchasing policy on January 9th necessitated an update to the schedule of the delegation of duties bylaw. While staff were undertaking this update, we included further amendments for consideration as well. The updates being considered today include updates to the new authority to award limits contained within the purchasing policy, administrative updates such as typo corrections, changes to staff titles, updates to links, changes in signatories, updates to bylaw numbers, etc. Inclusion of previously delegated items related to the signing of DC bylaw agreements. That was the recent report from Kevin and Randy brought forward a meeting or two ago. Leases for the Sydenham campus and the appointment of prosecutors and bylaw enforcement officers, and as well incorporating delegations related to legal services, which were not previously in there. The proposed changes are noted in further detail in the attachment to this report. And if there are any questions, myself or the relevant staff are happy to take those.
Well, thanks, Tara, for that. And it's pretty straightforward in your report there. Questions from county councilors? Anything, Madam Clerk? No?
No, nothing, Mr. Warden.
Okay, and then again, that was moved by Councillor Gamble and second by Councillor Hicks. Is there anybody opposed to that motion? Hearing none, that is carried. Okay. So moving on then to item F, community transportation update. And this was moved by Councillor Hutchison and Councillor Millen, and Stephanie Stewart is going to take this report. So good morning, Stephanie.
Good morning, Warden McQueen. Thank you for having me here today. It's a very exciting day. We are getting very, very close to the project launching. So we're just working away here, trying to get all of the final details done. As some of you may notice, if you're along the Highway 10 route, the signs have gone up for the bus stop locations. So those are up, which is really exciting. It's becoming very real. And we're getting lots of phone calls about the service and the schedules, and everybody is very excited and lots of positive feedback. So it's been wonderful. You'll see today in the report I have for you, it's a general overview of some of the things that council has asked me to look into. So one of them being the cost to increase our vehicle size to allow for additional capacities and additional riders. And I also included the additional cost to expand our vehicles to include both ambulatory and wheelchair accessible seating. So the price points are there. It is our recommendation to wait a little bit to see how the service goes and what the uptake is from our residents and our riders to learn what the patterns are before we invest any additional funds. But so far so good. We're going ahead the way as planned, and there are some options to improve our service over time, which I have in the report for you as well. Additionally, I met with Dufferin County staff, Town of Orangeville staff, and Bruce County staff to go over the implementation of a vehicle for hire bylaw. So the Town of Orangeville has done a lot of work on that already, and they do have some Uber drivers in Orangeville already. So we were working with them because there's no sense in duplicating things that have already been done well. So between the 3 counties and the Town of Orangeville, we're looking at a way to seamlessly implement a bylaw. So that way, individuals, it's not just going to be for Uber, it will be for all vehicle for hire. So it could be Lyft, it could be any other things that come up in the future, to allow those kinds of businesses and those drivers to travel seamlessly through all 3 counties, which ultimately aligns with the bus system that we're putting in place. So that the goal is it provides people with alternative forms of transit. So if you're able to take the bus down one way, but just based on scheduling and what you wanted to do with your life, you're not able to take the bus back. We're trying to make sure that people have options so that they're not stranded, and there's alternative ways for people to get home. So that's the report I have here for you today. Does anyone have any questions about the increases in service or the future of our vehicle for hire bylaw?
Thanks, Stephanie, for that report. County Councilor, any questions?
I have Councillor Potter and Mackey.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Potter first, and then Councillor Mackey. Go ahead.
Oh, okay, thank you, Warden, and thank you, Stephanie, for your report. I just wondered, I wasn't totally clear, and maybe the January 2021 date is the one I'm looking for, but just how quickly will we analyze the ridership and try to make a decision? Because we're a little concerned, I think, that people may get frustrated if there's more demand than we can meet early on, and we may lose them. So that could skew our numbers. So how quickly can we respond to that? And maybe the paragraph under planning for future system needs answers the question. I just want to be sure I'm getting the right answer there.
Stephanie?
Yes, through you, Warden McQueen. So that's a great question. And I think this is something that we will be doing constantly. So we'll be receiving KPI data from driver's seat on a regular basis, which will give me a good understanding of what's happening in our current ridership. We're also putting in the ability for someone to say, like, was it full? Did you want to book? So that people can indicate that there is more interest and that more people do want to book, but that it was full. So we're trying to mitigate all of those problems and try and collect that data so that way, if it is becoming an issue, then we'll know very quickly how to adjust for it. But one thing that we do need to consider is the lead time to purchase larger vehicles and to get larger vehicles in place. So that will take some time. What I could offer in place would be an alternative. So perhaps we could offer 2 of the same vehicles running down the road, which would increase capacity to 20 seats instead of 10. So there are solutions that we have. There are alternatives that we can put in place because driver's seat does have additional vehicles in their fleet, so we can access those vehicles if need be. We do have a great relationship with driver's seat, and we are aware, and they are aware, sorry, of your concerns. They have watched council presentations, and they are aware, and we are working very closely, and we'll keep a close eye on it. I will come back to council before January. January would be the latest you'll hear from me. I will commit to coming back as soon as I can with some concrete data.
Thanks, Stephanie. Any follow-up there, Councillor Potter?
No, that's got it. Thank you very much.
Okay, Councillor Mackey, and then Councillor Robinson I have on my list here. Go ahead, Councillor Mackey.
Thanks, Warden McQueen, and thanks, Stephanie. Look forward to seeing what the ridership numbers are going to be. Can you just a question, a follow-up around the specialized transit? Currently it's very fragmented throughout both Grey and Bruce Council or Grey and Bruce counties, and there are a number of lower tier municipalities that are anxious to see a Grey Bruce specialized transit system. So just wanting to know what sort of discussions are taking place so that we could have, equitable ridership for people with mobility issues. Currently a van may be leaving, Southgate traveling to Owen Sound. They travel right through Grey Highlands, but are not able to pick anyone up in Grey Highlands. And that's just an example. So I'm certainly not promoting one transit specialized system over another, but I think it is disjointed right now, and there is an opportunity, when we're looking at transportation, to develop a Grey Bruce specialized transit system. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mackey.
Mr.
Okay.
Warden, I can
Yes.
respond to this. The specialized transit services that I believe Councillor Mackey is looking for, similar to what SMART or HCSS provides, are services that pick people up at their home and that provide some assistance to folks as well to get them boarded onto the vehicle, etc., which is quite different than the task that Stephanie has before her, where people need to be at a scheduled stop. I think part of what we're trying to understand in these initial months of this program is where that demand line is and where there's a difference. Are we going to see folks coming to our bus stops that are in need of additional assistance or a different seating arrangement than is provided for in these buses? The good thing is that people are calling ahead to book their seat, and so that we prevent anyone from hopefully being disappointed in all of this. But going forward, as far as an accessible transit transportation system that actually would augment or work in alignment with HCSS and SMART. Those are a different project, and I think we need to look at structuring that as a separate thing going forward if we really want to kind of roll up our sleeves and get into it. My recommendation would be that we take a bit of time and see where this project is going to take us and how the public is going to respond to this service. And then we can look at how we could efficiently build on what we're doing here to extend the service out to others.
Thank you for that, Madam CEO. Councillor Mackey, did you have a follow-up on that?
Thank you, Warden, and thanks for those comments, Kim. I do think it's time to roll up our sleeves. You know, specialized transit is required throughout Grey and Bruce County, and you know, I'd like to see everyone have equal access to it, which currently doesn't exist. So thanks.
Okay, thank you. Next, I have Councillor Robinson, and I'm not sure if I have anybody else on the list, but go ahead, Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. And through you, great report as usual, Stephanie. Thank you for your comments, and also Madam CAO for your additional comments. So what would be the typical approach for our new Grey County commuters to utilize our bus service? Should they call ahead? Are they okay being at the bus stop? I wonder if you could just speak about our different routes and also including the Highway 4 corridor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Stephanie?
Through you, Warden McQueen. So we are asking all riders to book in advance. Due to contact tracing, if needed, we are asking that everybody books their seat in advance. This is to, as Kim had just said, to avoid disappointment. This ensures that you have a seat on the bus. We know that now that we know that the bus is full, this will help us also understand if we need to be tossing another vehicle in there because the demand is rising or falling. So it will give us a really good understanding by asking people to book in advance. As a result of that, which it's not a typical way to ride a bus. A typical way to ride a bus is that you just stand at the stop, you get on the bus and away you go. But in a world of COVID, we've implemented this and we think that it will be a very good safety measure. People will appreciate it. So in the future, we can look to change that, but that is something that we have right now. So we are trying our best to communicate that. So thank you for bringing that up. In addition to that, we are also having a trailer vehicle there for the first week and additional days if needed to ensure that no one is left stranded, so that, you know, we can provide that education on the first few days to say, hey, you know, you didn't book a seat, no worries, you can get on today, away we go. But just so you know, here's how you do it. So we do have two options. You can book online, or you can also call in advance and you can book your seat over the phone. So there's two different ways to do it. To follow up with your second question, which was reviewing the routes. So we've actually named the routes with numbers so to reduce the confusion. So the routes are now Route 1 and 2. So that will be Highway 10 routes. I'm just going to pull my sheet in front of me so I don't get this wrong. Routes 3 and 4 are Highway 26, so going Owen Sound to the town of Blue Mountains. Route 5 will be Owen Sound to Wyerton, and Route 6 will be Durham to Walkerton and Flesherton, including Hanover, of course. So those will be the routes. On Monday, September 14th, Highway 10 starts, so Route 1 and 2. Fares will be waived from the first day our service starts until October 31st. So it gives everybody a chance to try any of the routes for free for a short period of time. And then we'll start implementing the fees starting November 1st.
Okay, thanks, Stephanie. All right,
Mr. Warden?
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead.
I just want to, great response. Thank you, Stephanie. By chance, would you have the phone number that you could say? Thank you.
Would you like that verbally, or would you like that via email?
Oh, verbally at this meeting, if at all possible. Thank you.
Oh, sure. I can do that right now. I'm just going to confirm it.
Maybe put it in the chat.
I can, but I believe I have the phone number here. It is 226-910-1001.
So 226-10-1001.
226-910-1001.
910, yeah. Okay,
Thank you.
You're welcome.
thanks, Christine. All right, I think I have Councillor Millen maybe popped up there.
Councillor Clumpus first and then Councillor Millen.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Clumpus.
Warden, actually, my question follows the accessibility route, and I'm just wondering, well, you've actually answered the question, Stephanie, with your great report and your answer now, was how the need would be assessed for from the accessibility perspective, and how would this then translate into service for, and it's not only wheelchairs or ambulatory specialized transit services, it's for seniors that may have difficulty getting on a traditional bus route, but still needing to get to where they need to go. So that was my question, and if I could just have some more clarification on the accessibility perspective.
For sure.
Okay, Stephanie.
Through you, Warden. So that's a great question. And we've been fielding this question from members of our public with accessibility needs or just requiring a little bit of extra care. So we are able to provide individuals who are not in a mobility. We are able to provide rides for anyone who is able to exit their mobility device and take 1 or 2 steps into our vehicles. So if you're able to exit your device, if you use a walker or you use a wheelchair that is foldable, or you have canes, we can assist. Our chauffeurs will assist you to get into the vehicle. When we can store your mobility device in the vehicle. Individuals that require a lift at this time and to remain in their wheelchair while riding at this time are not able to, because the vehicles do not accommodate a full lift. So what we're doing to mitigate that is we are asking anyone who does require an accessible ride to contact us, and we are working with our partners and we're trying to do an overlay of services to understand what are the requirements, how do people qualify for the services that exist already in our community, and we're trying to educate them on what already exists, because the hope is that by offering a service like ours where we can perhaps take some of the ambulatory passengers from our specialized transit services, and we can take some of those passengers and perhaps we can kind of swap passengers back and forth to reduce the burdens that people are facing and the barriers that people are facing to transit right now. So we know it's an issue, we are working on it, and this is just our start, and we are committed to coming up with better solutions and working on it as it goes forward.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stephanie. All right, and next I have Councillor Millen.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Stephanie, just a question about luggage. Are there going to be restrictions on weight, size, volume? You know, are the drivers going to be given discretion to say, yeah, we can take that, no, we can't? I'm going to get out and help this person. I'm not going to get out and help this person. Where does that line lie, and whose responsibility ultimately will it be?
Through you, Warden. So we have the language already on the website, and DriverSeek has included the same language on their website. It is the responsibility of the passenger to carry their belongings on and off the vehicle. The chauffeur will not assist. I mean, they may assist, but it is not the responsibility of the driver to assist anybody with their packages or their parcels. We also have that language in there as well that says that it is the responsibility of the passenger that they may or may not be able to fit everything that they have on that bus due to capacity. So there is that line, there is that disclaimer in there to say, like, you can show up with all of your stuff, but you may or may not be able to fit on the bus with it. So we have made that very clear. The intention, and we are expecting most people to travel with, you know, a bag or two, a backpack or a small travel bag. But if someone does require a lot of space, I would encourage them to perhaps find other forms of transportation.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Oh, and just one more, if I might, Mr. Warden. Are
ahead.
we going to track no-shows?
Yes and no, but it doesn't, because people are paying in advance, it would be no different than if people bought a book of tickets and then just didn't use them. So we will know that people haven't showed up, but it's the responsibility of the passenger to be at the stop 5 minutes prior to the bus arriving and to make it onto that bus themselves.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks for those questions. Anyone else have any questions?
Yes, I have Councillor Keaveney.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Keaveney. Thanks, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and through you to Stephanie, if I may. When we had our local bus service in Meaford, one of the issues that we discovered was the challenge of people really understanding how to ride the bus. And I know there's great information on the website. I've looked at that, Stephanie, but I'm just wondering about the education component that you spoke to earlier in your presentation, and whether perhaps you'd reached out to, say, local outreaches and community livings and those sorts of organizations to work with them to help their clients really understand the system of Simply.
Yes, through you, Warden. So I think that question is kind of twofold. So as a result of COVID, many volunteer agencies are just not able to offer the same volunteer services that they had before. And my concern at this time would be our capacity is already very limited on the bus. So I wouldn't want to add any additional passengers to provide advice because that would take away from seating on the bus. What I can offer and what we are doing in the first week is we are having, driver's seat is going to be out there in full force, that we will do our best to educate. And I will be out there as well on the first week, trying to travel around to the different stops and providing that education. So we will. But the second piece to that is if there are individuals with disabilities that are traveling our bus, and whether it be cognitive or physical, they are allowed to travel with a support worker who may be able to provide that additional support and explanation on how to use the bus. And I'm happy to work with our community living agencies to assist them. I've actually had some agencies reach out to me and ask if they can book the seats for their clients on their behalf, just because that may be a challenge for some of their clients. So we are creating those relationships, and we are providing third-party billing and different things like that with our agencies, with our specialized populations. So I appreciate the sentiment, and I know what we're trying to achieve and where we want to go with education, because transit is new in Grey County. So we want to make sure we're educating everyone on it, and we will get there. Just COVID is kind of hard to add all those extra bodies in at this time.
Okay, anything else, Councillor Keaveney?
No, that's great, Mr. Warden. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. And I guess there'll be lots of cleaning protocols that will be done by driver's seat, I presume. And it's good to see that you have the students and the senior discount that some of us may take advantage of. And also if you reached out to a number of the businesses through Grey County, maybe through Economic Development has, to inform them about this new availability for employees to be able to take advantage of and stuff like that?
Mr. Warden, we are working with our economic development team, and we will be doing, some more communications and more blasts out to our businesses. Once I have a complete package with all the schedules finalized, I do intend to go out to our businesses in the communities to hand these things out in paper format so people have access to them. So I will be doing boots on the ground, going in person to meet with our businesses to ensure that everyone knows about the service.
Good, yeah, because certainly for businesses in Grey County and, getting employees and stuff like that, and, sourcing them is sometimes a tough thing, right? And I presume that the wheels on the bus go round and round?
Yes, they do.
Come on, Councillor Millen, you can smile there. All right, so we have this, any further questions? This is great news for Grey County, and Councillor Burley, we can maybe get some people up to that airport as well. All right, so this was moved by Councillor Hutchison and Councillor Millen. Seeing there's no other comments, anybody opposed to this? Hearing none, that is carried. Well, thanks, Stephanie, and keep up the good work, and promotion, right?
Thank you.
Okay, that's great. All right, so moving on then to our next report with regards to the development charge bylaw. And this was moved by Councillor O'Leary and second by Councillor Hutchinson. And I know Kevin and Randy are sort of team, working together on this, but I was told that maybe Randy's going to take the lead on this. So good afternoon, Randy. It's afternoon now, so welcome.
Yeah, good afternoon, and thank you, Mr. Warden, and good afternoon, everyone. So the purpose of this report is to propose changes to the county's development charges bylaws to encourage more rental housing, nonprofit housing, and detached additional dwelling units by exempting these developments from a county DC. Other proposed changes to the bylaws include alignment with the recent changes to the Development Charges Act, supporting incentives related to municipal community improvement plans, as well as the county's community improvement plan program, and considering DC credits for qualifying redevelopment projects. These proposed changes align with the policy direction in Recolor Gray being the county's official plan, and align with direction previously provided by council. We should note that we also had Hempson Consulting review the proposed changes to the DC bylaws, as they are the county's current development charges consultant. So what we'll do is we'll provide an overview of the proposed changes to the bylaws and then outline next steps in terms of moving forward should Committee of the Whole support the proposed changes as outlined in the report. So as council is aware, there is an ongoing need for more affordable housing throughout Grey County, and more importantly, rental housing, nonprofit housing, and additional secondary dwelling units. Through the Recolor Gray process, we heard from residents on a number of occasions about the need for more affordable housing and the need for more rental housing. The current average vacancy rate for rental housing is quite low. It's approximately 1.9%. The current provincial average is 2%. And a healthy housing market vacancy rate is considered to be between 3 to 4%. We're also hearing from employers indicating that their employees are finding it difficult to find affordable housing near their place of work, as well as we're hearing from newcomers to Grey County who are indicating it's difficult to find housing options that are affordable. In the fall of 2019, council supported in principle changes to the development charges bylaws to exempt rental housing, nonprofit housing, and detached additional dwelling units from a county DC. Council also supported changes to the DC bylaw to align with the changes to the Development Charges Act. In December 2019, the province proclaimed some of the changes to the Act. And in July of this year, the province made further changes to the Development Charges Act as part of Bill 197, being the COVID-19 Economic Recovery Act. Some of the sections of the Development Charges Act have been proclaimed to date, and some of the associated regulations have not been released yet. However, based on recent changes made to the Act, staff believe we have enough information to move forward now with the proposed changes to the county DC bylaws at this time. So now I'll just give an overview of the proposed changes to the bylaws. So the DC Act allows municipalities to exempt certain types of development from development charges. And certain types of development are already exempt under our current bylaws. For example, additional secondary dwelling units constructed within or attached to an existing residential unit are exempt from a county development charge. Non-residential development is also currently exempt in our county development charges bylaw. To help address the need for more affordable housing options, the proposal is to exempt, as I mentioned, purpose-built rental housing, nonprofit housing, and additional dwelling units. This would allow developers to reduce their overall development costs, which could make a rental project more viable, and may allow developers or homeowners to proceed with rental projects earlier than originally anticipated. It would also free up capital costs, which could potentially be invested in more rental housing builds or adding more units to a proposed build. And if there were more rental housing options, some people may sell their existing homes and move into a rental unit to either downsize or to free up equity in their existing house, which in turn would free up more housing supply. So just to provide an overview of the changes. So the first change, as I mentioned, is exempting all new purpose-built rental units. And this exemption would apply to any rental housing units that are designed and built expressly for long-term accommodation, and would include such housing types as rental apartments, rental townhouses, or rental dorm-style units. A definition for purpose-built rentals has been included in the proposed amendments to the bylaws. And we stole this from one of the draft regulations under the DC Act that hasn't been proclaimed yet, but has been drafted. And the definition is 4 or more dwelling units, all of which are intended for use as rented residential premises. In order to ensure that these developments stay as rentals over a period of time, for example, 20 years, staff are recommending that an agreement be entered into with the owner that would be registered on title. Staff are proposing that we monitor this, the overall average vacancy rate. And if the rate returns to healthy levels, then council could reinstate a development charge for rental housing units as a future update to the DC bylaw. In terms of potential loss of revenue for exempting rental housing units, there are 4 rental development projects that staff are aware of over the past several years that have either been built or currently being proposed or under construction. These rental developments have or will create a total of 125 rental units. So we've estimated, and this is over the last, say, 5 years. So this equates to approximately $100,000 per year on average of potential lost revenue if rental units were exempted. This loss of revenue is considered minor if it will help result in more rental housing being created. The second exemption is exempting all residential housing developments constructed by either nonprofit organizations or development projects that are supported through funding provided by our county housing department or through the National Housing Strategy. And by exempting these units, we hope that this will result in more affordable housing being created throughout the county. This exemption could include housing built by Habitat for Humanity, Community Living, the Owen Sound Municipal Nonprofit Housing Corporation, the Blue Mountains Sustainable Housing Corporation, as well as other nonprofit housing organizations. There have been some private residential developments that have also received funding from the county in the past through the Investment in Affordable Housing Program. One of the examples is the Durham project. Normally, the county has provided a grant in lieu of development charges for those projects. However, what we're recommending is that these projects, if they receive funding through our housing department or through the National Housing Strategy, would just be exempted. A definition for nonprofit housing development has been included in the draft bylaws. And again, this aligns with the definition in the draft regulations in the Development Charges Act, and would also include other types of development as noted. Over the past several years, there have been approximately 60 nonprofit housing units that have been constructed, which is approximately 12 units on average per year. Most of these units have been apartments or other multiple residential units. So assuming that average, we anticipate an average of about $50,000 in lost revenue per year. Staff are aware of an additional 100 units that are being proposed. And as you heard from Anne Marie's report earlier, there could even be more units, which is fantastic. So if nonprofit housing were exempted, this would result in a loss of DC revenue. But again, we feel that over a period of time, it would average out, we think, approximately $50,000 per year. Again, staff feel that this is a minor loss considering the overall benefits that are provided by having more affordable housing options for Grey County residents. Staff also hope that by nonprofits saving on development charge costs, that these savings can then be used to construct even more affordable housing units. The third exemption we're proposing is detached additional dwelling units. So the current county development charge bylaw exempts additional dwelling units that are within or attached to an existing dwelling. And the proposed amendment would also exempt detached additional dwelling units on the same property, as well as any new units that are being constructed. If they wanted to put in a basement apartment as part of that new build, that would also be exempted based on our current proposed bylaw changes. So for example, if a property owner wanted to construct a detached additional dwelling unit in their backyard as a laneway housing unit, or construct a detached garage with an additional dwelling unit built above or attached to that garage, then a county development charge would not apply. This aligns with the province's recent changes to Planning Act that requires municipalities to permit additional dwelling units both within, attached, and attached to an existing dwelling. Draft regulations have been provided by the province for additional dwelling units. These haven't been proclaimed to date, but again, we feel that based on the direction from the province, we're not likely to see any changes to the draft regulations. In 2018, a total of 11 additional dwelling units were built throughout the county. And in 2019, we saw 14 additional or secondary dwelling units. It's not known whether these were within, attached, or detached to the existing dwelling, but we've just assumed that a total potential revenue loss based on our current exemptions and based on the proposed exemptions is approximately $75,000 to $100,000 each year. This, again, represents a relatively minor loss when compared to the overall DC revenue collected by the county. Some of the other proposed changes that we're proposing as part of this is including what we're calling a development charge deferral policy. So throughout the past few years, the county has accepted development charge requests for several development projects with the premise that the projects were providing more affordable, attainable housing options. Some examples include life lease developments, as well as purpose-built rental conversion projects. The proposed changes to the bylaws would include a reference to a deferral policy be created, which would outline criteria for when county would consider entering into a DC deferral agreement. Staff are recommending that the policy be a separate document to the bylaw, and this would allow council to amend the policy without triggering an update to the bylaw. It should be noted that the province's recent changes to the Act requires municipalities to defer charges for purpose-built rental housing, nonprofit, and institutional developments. And you may recall that previous report where we talked about interest rates with respect to those required deferrals. Based on the proposed exemptions for rental housing and nonprofit housing, and based on the county's current DC bylaw not applying a charge to non-residential developments, the required deferrals under the DC Act would no longer be applicable to the county's development charges based on the proposed changes. So in order to consider other deferrals beyond what's required under the Act, staff are recommending that the deferral policy identify other types of development that could be considered. And what staff are recommending are any development that is proposing housing units that meet accessibility for Ontario Disability Act standards. So any housing that meets those standards would be eligible potentially for a deferral until time of occupancy. Other rental developments that would not be eligible for exemption would also be considered. So things like triplex rental buildings, because as you remember, the definition we're proposing is 4 more units. But if someone was proposing a triplex rental unit or building, they would also be potentially eligible for at least a deferral. Condo apartments or life lease developments are also something that we're recommending be considered for a deferral until time of occupancy. For developments that meet that criteria, a deferral agreement would be required, which would need to be registered on title. We are recommending, similar to the other deferral agreements, that the Director of Corporate Services and the Director of Planning be delegated the ability to sign these agreements. If a DC deferral request is received that does not meet that criteria, council could still consider those. That would just need to come forward through a written request that council would have to consider through a meeting. Council can charge an interest on the funds deferred and to be consistent with the interest rate that council approved for previously for the DC rate freezes, we're recommending that that be the same, which is currently 3.5%. Again, this is in line with Canada's prime rate, as well as the county's average indexing of development charge rate over the last 3 years. The next proposed change that we're proposing is redevelopment credits. So the proposed changes to the bylaws would consider credits for what we're calling redevelopment projects. For example, if a commercial building is being converted to residential units, a credit would be provided in the amount of what the commercial DC rate would have been if a county non-residential rate was applied to the commercial space. And this would be discounted from the residential charge. The calculated non-res rate identified in the latest DC background study was just under $34 per square meter in 2016. Using the index rates that were applied to the residential rate, the non-res index rate would be in 2020 would be just under $38 per square meter. Although the county has never collected a non-residential charge in the past, this credit recognizes that there is at least a like for like in the amount of services provided by the county for the current commercial use as it will be for the future residential use. So it recognizes that services are already being provided to those commercial uses. And so there's at least a like for like in the services that are already being provided that should be credited to the new residential conversions that are being proposed. We think that this is a more fair approach than what is currently identified in our bylaw. In terms of actual building conversions, we don't have an exact value or number, but there have been a few conversions over the past several years. So we may see more requests as well in the future to convert commercial space to residential space, given that there is less demand for commercial space, and this has been further intensified by the pandemic. If a credit were to be applied, this will result in a slight reduction in DC revenue to be collected, and we would monitor that over time to see what that potentially would be. The next proposed changes is exempting development charges for approved community improvement plan projects. So County Council supported a community improvement plan program in 2019, and local municipalities are currently working on updates to their existing CIPs or working on adopting the new community improvement plan to align with the new CIP program. The CIP program is designed to provide incentives for encouraging certain types of development, including attainable housing stock, vacant brownfield development, downtown revitalization, and adaptive reuse of commercial, industrial, and institutional buildings. Staff are recommending that when a county DC charge applies to a development that has received a grant through a community improvement plan program, that a DC, that they be exempted from a county development charge. Again, this would help to further encourage the types of priority developments that council wants to see happen throughout the county, and would also align with the recent changes made to the county's fees and services bylaw to recognize that any fees and services, such as planning application fees, could also be waived or exempted in accordance with the community improvement plan. It's too early to tell what revenue impact this would have. However, staff, again, would monitor this over time through the CIP monitoring. In terms of the next section, the amendments based on DC Act changes, and I'm almost done, I apologize for the length. The report highlights a number of recent changes that have made to the DC Act by the province. The proposed bylaw amendments have been drafted again to align with those proposed changes to the DC Act where applicable. There are a number of changes that have been made to the Act that have not been proclaimed to date. And these include additional eligible services that municipalities can collect a DC for, such as childcare and early years programs and services, housing services, services related to proceedings under the Provincial Offences Act, and services related to emergency preparedness. The DC Act changes will also remove the 10% discount for eligible services. So these are definitely changes that I think will benefit the county going forward. As I mentioned, they haven't been proclaimed to date, but the county can consider these further changes as part of the next 5-year update to the county development charge bylaws, which will occur in 2021. So again, I apologize for the length of the presentation. It's a lot of information that we know in this report, as well as being proposed in these bylaw changes. But that just provides an overview of those changes that we are proposing. It should be noted that there may be revisions to those bylaws prior to the public meeting, just to address overall mechanics and how these exemptions and deferrals are going to be administered. In terms of next steps, should committees support these amendments in principle, staff will post those bylaw changes along with this report for review and comment on the county website. We will also email the proposed amendments to local municipalities, developers, consultants, and other agencies looking for comments. A public meeting, we're looking at scheduling a virtual public meeting in October. And a notice of the public meeting will be posted on the county website and posted in local newspapers. And then following that public meeting, we'll summarize all the comments we receive and bring back a report with a final revised version of the bylaws for council's consideration, which we're hoping to do in November or early December. And again, I apologize for the link. I don't know if Kevin has anything further to add to that presentation, but we're happy to take any questions that council may have.
I don't think you missed anything, Randy, so thank you very much for that. That's really good. And Kevin, do you have anything to add before I go to questions, or?
Not really. Randy's done a good job, but I just like to reiterate it. It'd be a process here that we're looking for consultation on this, so there changes can be made based on the comments that we receive from local municipalities or and public on this as well.
So, Mr. Warden, I have questions from Councillor O'Leary and Councillor Millen.
So Kevin, we're having a hard time hearing you. Can you just switch your video off and just sort of say the last few minutes that you just said there?
Certainly. I would just like to
Kevin, his video was very broken there, so I don't know, maybe if there's a question comes there. So
I think Kevin just noted that making sure that so we're going to be noted this report and for comments and consultation with local municipalities, and obviously we're open to having any further discussions with local municipal staff if there's any specific questions on the proposed changes to the county DC bylaws.
Thanks for that, Randy. I just wanted, maybe not everybody heard me. I think we're having a little bit of a internet issue here at the county, but I think maybe we're all good. So thank you for that, Randy. Madam Clerk, questions? I didn't quite catch what you were saying. I was sort of.
That's okay. Councillors O'Leary and Millen.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Councillor O'Leary, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and through you to Randy. Thanks, Randy, for the presentation. I just want to be clear on a situation. I'll use the Strathcona apartments as an example. If those development charges get waived and in 2030 that building gets sold and the new owner wants to switch it over to condos, then the development charges will be applicable. Will they be the amount that was deferred from 2020, or will they be updated to 2030? And that's all registered on title. So that would that transfer, or would it be updated with the amount?
So is that a Randy or Kevin question? I'm not sure.
I'll take a stab at it. Yeah, great question. That's a great example of an ongoing proposed development that we're excited to see happen. With respect to that, it's so what it would be is for that we've already entered into an agreement for that development, and the way the agreement's written is that the development charges are due based on when they issued the permit, because normally development charges are based on are paid or when the permit is issued, building permit is issued. So the current agreement recognizes that what would have been due at time of building permit. It also recognizes that if the development charge bylaw changes, that there may not be any charge. But as you pointed to, Councillor Leary, if down the road they were to propose as to convert those to a condominium development, what staff are proposing is that we would enter into, in this case, another agreement with that developer as well as any future developers, that if they propose to change or convert that, say within a 20-year period of when the charge would have been due, then they would owe the development charges that would have been due at time of building permit. So whenever that time frame would be, so say for example, if they got the building permit this year, they would owe the development charges as it stands in 2020, and not when they're proposing their conversion, if that makes sense.
Good. Thank you very much.
Good question. All right. Next I have Councillor Millen.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Randy, is it still a requirement for a municipality to make up the difference of DCs that have been exempted, you know, on an annual basis, to make up the loss that you spoke to out of general taxation?
Randy?
Because as you pointed out, in the grand scheme of things, it's a relatively small dollar amount. But I think it's important to recognize that as taxpayers, we still need to fund that infrastructure somehow. So that money has to be, you know, everybody else has to pitch into the pot to make up the difference. Is that still the case?
That's a great question. We had that exact same question in discussion with our development charges consultant yesterday, actually. So with respect to that, basically, and Kevin can jump in here too, because this is getting more into the financial weeds a little bit, but basically, I'll just use the current example. Our current development charge bylaw doesn't have a non-residential charge. So when we did the development charges background study, using the growth forecasting, 92% of the overall county development charge is residential, 8% is non-residential charge. So what we do when we move forward with a capital project that is a growth related, charge related project, we're only using 92% of the eligible development charges for that project, because we've exempted, or council's exempted the non-residential component of that project. So we don't have to fund back necessarily back into what we're exempting through reserves, but we have to calculate it based on what we've actually are going to be collecting and what we then can apply through a development charge or an eligible development cost that we collect through development charges. Does that make sense? I don't know if Kevin can explain it a little bit easier, but basically the short answer is no, we don't have to fund that back in reserve. We just have to adjust what we apply as a growth related cost or eligible revenue towards that capital project. So the remaining balance essentially has to come from other sources. That's through either tax levy or through other funding sources in order to make up that difference. So
you're essentially prorating the amount that you charge up front to make up for that 8% in your example that you're talking about.
Correct.
So at the end of the day, we still have the same amount of money that our DC study shows that we need to fund the infrastructure. Is that what you're telling me?
Can I jump in here?
Yes.
Yeah, turn your camera on, Kevin. I love to see you. There you go. All right. Go Leafs, go.
Well, only thing is, Kevin, if you start to get garbled, you might have to switch back. I know we're having some problems with the internet here, but go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, I'll try. Yes, so that we're not changing the capital program in any way. Those gross costs for those capital projects are still there. So while we're funding what we say is being collected from the DC reserve, the balance then, the more that we add is exempted, is then going to have to come from other sources such as taxation.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Thanks for that. Any further questions, Madam Clerk?
Yes, Councillor Mackey.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Mackey.
Thanks, Warden. And Randy, thanks for the lengthy report. I certainly agree with the intended purpose. Just wondering around, some of the detached units that may be on a property, a detached garage. How do we ensure that it is for long-term affordable housing and doesn't become a short-term rental or Airbnb?
Okay, I don't know if Randy or Kevin got that question. You're a little garbled there, Councillor Mackey. Go ahead.
I heard the question. It was a good question. So basically, from a county policy perspective, we wouldn't have any control over whether or not that would remain as a short-term rental versus a long-term rental. There are some municipalities, such as the town of the Blue Mountains, does have bylaws in place that regulates short-term accommodations. To my knowledge, that's the only municipality in Grey County that has moved forward with a program such as that. So outside of controlling the actual short-term accommodation or long-term accommodation through a separate bylaw process, there would be really no mechanism to really control whether or not that could be a long-term rental or a short-term accommodation.
So basically there's nothing to control it, is what you're saying, Randy.
Yeah, so there may be the odd time where, yeah, someone could offer that up as a short-term accommodation. We're hoping that, that in most cases that will not be the case, because the demand is there for that the residents need more long-term accommodation rental units. And so based on that demand, we're hoping that that demand will be taken up by some landowners who want to add a secondary unit to their dwelling.
Okay, Scott. I mean, but that also, go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly appreciate that, most people will likely do the right thing. I just hate to see some take advantage of no DC charge and then, create a small business on their property or convert above their garage into accommodation for guests on the weekend, under the premise of being a long-term rental. But thank you.
Okay, thank you for Scott. And just for clarity, Randy, Grey Highlands has already also put in a policy with regards to Airbnb.
Okay.
It's a little different than Blue Mountains, but we certainly have been working through this for the last 2.5 years through Michelle as well. So dealing with those issues of concern, I think that Councillor Mackey has raised for sure. Other questions, Madam Clerk?
No, sir.
Okay, well, fantastic report there, Randy, and I'm sure glad we moved forward with regards to the detached to be exempt from development charges. That's something that I think was raised even in the last term of council, I think, of county council. So I know it takes time to get there, and certainly seeing that there's a shortage for rentals, and hopefully, as Councillor Mackey is saying, that those rentals become long-term rentals, and also I think for young people and seniors as well, of family members and non-family members as well. So
absolutely.
So that's been moved. Again, I'll just reiterate, that's been moved by Councillor Leary and second by Councillor Hutchison. Is there anybody opposed? Sorry, anybody opposed to that motion? Okay, seeing none, that is carried. Okay, we have one more report, and this is with regards to a county official plan amendment. And this is moved by Councillor O'Leary and Councillor Hicks and Councillor Mackey. I can't even read my printing here. So that's been moved in second. And I think, Randy, you're taking on this report as well?
Hiba is going to take this report.
Okay, I had you down, but that's quite fine. She'll do just as great a job as yourself. So, Hiba,
hello, Council. Good afternoon, Council. I'm going to just be putting on a presentation. So my report is concerning a county official plan amendment, OPA 4, that affects the property number 423020 Harbor Drive. The subject lands are located at Lot 5 and 6 and Part Lot 7, Broken Front Concession, Geographic Township of Sydenham, now in the municipality of Meaford. The surrounding lands the subject lands are surrounded by rural lands to the east and to the south. To the west of the property is an old rural residential subdivision, and to the north is north to the property is Georgian Bay. The proposed development would consider exceptions to the transportation policies in the county official plan in sections of Move-Brae, agricultural and rules to permit lot creation where the remnant lot has access via an unopened road, a municipal road allowance. as the subject lands are approximately 37.6 hectares in total. The severed portions of the land will be approximately 19.8 hectares in size, with approximately 26 meters of frontage on Queensbush Road. The retained parcel of land will that currently contains 9 seasonal cottages will maintain will have an area of 17.8 hectares and will continue to have access from a municipal unopened road allowance, Harbor Drive. The severed lands, as mentioned, will have road access to an open, maintained public road. The retained lots will not be permitted new development through these applications until such a time as proper road access is ensured or the road is upgraded to municipal standards. A joint public meeting was held for the official plan and zoning bylaw application at Municipality of Meaford Council on July 28, 2020. This is a map of the proposed consent. As we can see, the retained parcel that currently contains the 9 cottages has access off the unopened municipal road allowance, whereas the severed parcel will continue to have that 26-meter road frontage off of Queensbush Drive. No agency comments were received from Enbridge Gas and Historic Saugeen Métis, and they mentioned they had no concerns with this application. Received comments from Grey Sauble Conservation Authority, and they just wanted a condition to be included as part of the approval of this application, that a zoning bylaw amendment be applied to the lands that are that identifies the hazard lands on the property. As of date, this zoning bylaw has been brought forward to the municipality of Meaford and the zoning bylaw has been approved. No public comments were received on the subject application. Just looking at some of the planning policies, the proposed retained lot currently and following the proposed consent would have access to an unopened municipal road allowance, Harbor Drive. Before this proposal was brought forward, the 2 properties were separate properties but accidentally merged on title, and now they're bringing back forward this application to resever the lots that previously existed. So the retained lot has always had access off of an unopened road allowance, Harbor Drive. No development, as I mentioned, will be permitted on the retained lands until a time that the road has been upgraded to ensure that safety of all development is there. The municipality has not identified any issues with poor sightlines or the intersection. So the municipality has mentioned that there's no safety concerns with allowing the severance to move forward. The Municipality of Meaford Planning Department prepared a report in February of this year that addressed this issue of lot creation on a municipal road allowance. Staff concluded in that report that it was in the interest of the municipality to maintain the land in municipal ownership versus selling the unopened road allowance to the applicant to turn it into a private road. The applicant's planner has indicated that the applicant is open to discussion with respect to an agreement with the municipality. The municipality of Meaford, as I have mentioned, has determined that it is in their municipal interest to allow for the lot creation where the retained lot has access to an unopened municipal road allowance until they've been able to complete a formal inventory of their road system. Staff are of the opinion that the proposed official plan amendment is consistent with planning policies such as Planning Act, PPS 20, and the Meaford official plan, and it does conform to the goals and intents of the county official plan. My recommendation for this report, PDR CW 3120, be that it be received and proposed official plan 4 of the county official plan to consider exceptions to the transportation policies in Move Grey, agriculture, and rural sections be to permit lot creation where the remnant lot has access via unopened municipal road allowance. That the proposed official plan amendment 4 be supported to redesignate the land from a rural to rural with exceptions on the subject property. I'm happy to take any questions.
Well, thanks, Hiba. And I'm not sure if we can go back to all county council there. So I can
Yep.
Madam Clerk, is there any questions there from anyone?
No, sir, not that I can see.
I don't know if Mayor Klumpus has anything to add or not. Maybe not. I just wasn't asking her to speak to it, other than it is in her municipality, and the recommendation here is to support. So
I see Councillor Body.
Yep, go ahead, Councillor Body.
I'm just wondering, is this on wells and septic beds, or is there water and full sewer service?
So Councillor Compass, maybe that's maybe to you, or Councillor Keaveney, or Hiba. I'm not sure who would like to answer that.
It is on well and septic.
So to follow up on that, how can this possibly be good planning that meets the requirements of the provincial policy statement? We're continuing to build take-up farmland. We're continuing to put housing and urban settings on rural services. If I'm not mistaken, MEPR declared a climate emergency. Maybe they didn't, but there's not a school there. There's not a grocery store there. There isn't any services there. They're miles from the next community, so everyone's going to have to drive in. I just don't see why we keep doing this and how it's good planning. You know, we should be doing this type of urban development in close to an urban setting. I just, it astonishes me as we move forward with climate change, how we're going to keep putting houses out in further away with no transportation, nothing, and then say that we're doing something. I just see it as a conflict. Thanks.
Well, thank you, Councillor Body. Hiba, do you have any comments? I guess there was a public meeting as well.
Yes, so I just want to reiterate that the retained parcel will not be permitted to allow any development until the road has been upgraded to a municipal standard. The development, the severed portion is permitted to develop, and the lot density on this property has not been met. So the severance will not exceed that lot density policies that we do have in our plan. In terms of servicing, the Grace Sobel reviewed this application and they had no concerns with development along the shoreline or in terms of the hazards. They have been able to identify a developable area in the severed portion that will not impact the hazards or the shoreline. So it's from their perspective, they don't foresee any impact to the natural heritage or the hazards with development being allowed on the severed portion, which does have access to a municipal road.
Are you able to also speak to the provincial policy that was brought forward from Councillor Body? He mentioned about the provincial policy with regards to the policy that's in place. I'm under the understanding that provincial policy, if you don't have services or have services, septic and wells are allowed only if there are no other options. Is that correct, or is that how the provincial policy was rolled out?
Correct. So there is a hierarchy of servicing that the PPS does highlight. So in settlement areas, we do require full servicing if that is available. So just in terms of the hierarchy, if it's in rural lands and it is feasible to put property or development on septic and wells, and it is in a negative impact to the environment, then it is permissible within the PPS. I'm not sure if Randy has anything to add to that the servicing piece, but
no, other than what HIP has already indicated, there's no new development that's being proposed with respect to this particular application. And again, it recognizes that what was once already existed, the lots merged on title. There is 9 cottages that are on the one parcel, but as HIB indicated, if there was any new development that's proposed on that, they would have to upgrade the municipal road. They would also then have to demonstrate that whatever that development would look like would have to would have no impacts to the environment. when it comes to any servicing that would have to be proposed to service that development. And as have indicated, the provincial policy does consider new development on well and septic. The preference is no doubt for sure full services, and we in our policies and our official plan direct the majority of their growth to fully serviced settlement areas.
Well, thank you, Heba and Randy. Any follow-up on that, Councillor Body? I know, just want to get that clear.
No, I've made my point. Thanks, Heba, for the report. It's well done.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions into this report? Madam Clerk, anything from anyone else?
No, sir.
Okay, well, thank you. And again, just to iterate, this was moved by Councillor Hicks and second by Councillor Mackey. Anybody opposed to this motion? I hear none. That's
See Councillor Hicks. Sorry, Councillor Hicks has his hand up as in opposition.
Okay, so let me just go through that again and I'll flip the screens. Is anybody in opposition? So anybody opposed to this resolution? So I can flip my screen. So I have Councillor Hicks.
Councillor O'Leary opposed.
Councillor O'Leary.
Councillor O'Leary and Councillor Body.
And Councillor Millen.
Councillor Millen. Okay. And so then that will be carried because the majority who didn't oppose it sort of through the process. Okay. So that's carried. Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Warden, I
Yes.
wonder, the Joint Accessibility Advisory minutes were pulled from the consent.
Yes.
And before we move into the masking bylaw discussion and the closed session, I wondered with council's permission if we could put that on now rather than at the very end. Councillor Klumpus had requested it be pulled, and I think just with the discussions with Stephanie's report, it's likely her questions have been answered, but I thought perhaps we could put it there before we went to closed session.
No, thank you for that, Madam Clerk. And that was item H, as I had indicated on my sheet. And so with, is anybody opposed to going there now from County Council? Okay, I'm hearing none, so we'll go to that. And Councillor Klumpus, you had pulled the minutes of the Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee minutes of August 25th. We will need to move and second those minutes because they were pulled from that. But at this time, I will give you the floor. Okay, Klumpus, do I have a seconder? I can only see, I see Councillor Potter. I see Councillor Potter just on my one screen here. So. Okay, so the floor is yours, Councillor Klumpus.
Thanks very much, Mr. Warden. And I did want to pull this just to ask the question regarding future plans for accessible buses and any ideas that had come out of the accessibility committee for that eventuality. But Stephanie's report was very thorough. Discussion that followed certainly answered a lot of my questions and my concerns and the concerns of our accessibility committee as well. So I thank you for that, and I'm happy to support this now.
Okay, well, thank you for that. Are there any other questions from County Council before I ask for your position on this motion? I see none, Madam Clerk. Anybody opposed to these minutes? Hearing none, that's carried. Okay. All right, Madam Clerk, we'll go back to item I then on our committee of the whole meeting with regards to a verbal update on masking bylaw. And I'm looking at my, I don't have that. There's no motion here. So I guess it's a verbal report. And I guess I'm going to Madam CAO on this, or am I going to?
No, Madam CAO will do this.
Okay.
Thanks, Mr. Warden and Council. I'm just going to share my screen with you. We have a short presentation here. The purpose of this discussion is to walk you through the principles that we intend to use in the masking bylaw, the face covering bylaw that will come forward to the next meeting. As I take you through these principles, just keep note if there are things that you have questions or concerns about. I just want to hear those so that we can understand where concerns lie and what adjustments we might need to make. So I'm just going to share my screen.
So while you're doing that, Madam CEO, do we have Dr. Era on the line for questions, or is he
No.
left?
No, he's been involved in this discussion.
Okay.
As we prepare here. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So as I say, this is the core concepts of the face covering bylaw as we understand them at this point. That we have been under an order and continue to be under an order from the medical officer of health requiring face coverings to be worn to prevent the transmission of the COVID-19 virus. Developing a bylaw has been and continues to be a joint effort with the medical officer of health and with Bruce County. While Dr. Era has extended his order now for an additional 28 days as of yesterday, the intent here is to replace that order with a bylaw that would be the same in the two counties. We would likely need to retain this bylaw in place until the threat of the pandemic has passed, but we intend to build in at least an annual review into the process. Going to a bylaw from an order allowed enforcement to take place across Grey and Bruce consistently by a wider group of actors, not only the health inspectors, but bylaw enforcement officers, police, etc. So the core requirements of a bylaw would be, it would apply to those over the age of 2 and those who are not, don't have some other exemption. It would ask people to wear a face covering in an enclosed public place when that place is open to the public, except if it's been exempted, and we'll talk about that in a moment. A face covering as defined by the proposed bylaw can be a medical or non-medical mask, anything that can cover the nose and the mouth and the chin. It presents a barrier to the transmission of the infectious droplet. So we're not deviating from the order that Dr. Era currently has in place. Where does it apply? In an enclosed place, except where there exists an exemption. So an enclosed place is somewhere that has 4 walls and a floor and a ceiling. The medical officer of health can issue exemptions for specific facilities, either a specific location or a type of facility. And we'll get into that in a moment. Open to the public means that it applies to all persons in the area when that place is open. There's not an intent to require masking at other times. I think it's important to note as well that what we're looking to do here is to continue to make sure that the public understands how important it is that we all play the role of doing the right thing and preventing infection. But like all bylaws, they're undertaken on a complaint basis, right? I don't think there's any expectation that any of our enforcement personnel are going out and seeking to undertake enforcement. I anticipate that this is something that would be done because there was an issue. Masks are not required. As I said, if you're under 2 years old, if the facility is exempted, if there's some necessity to accommodate a disability, or there's a protection under the Human Rights Code. As an individual person, you are to wear a mask. If you're responsible for a dependent individual, like a little child, then you should ensure that they wear a mask. Not to tamper with signage that's on the outside of a place of business, and to not obstruct or make false statements to enforcement personnel. The facility or location owner or operator is responsible for developing an exception policy if they feel that something like that's required. And there's probably some discussion that's needed there to make sure that the signage is posted on the doorway so people are aware of what their responsibilities are. And should someone attend that place and not be compliant, to take reasonable steps to ask them, or to tell them that they can seek services another way, or to leave the premises. The medical officer of health and the county's responsibilities. The Dr. Era can issue exemptions where it's appropriate. Grey and Bruce County, we want to take a coordinated enforcement approach with each other, with each of our lower tier municipalities, and with public health to make sure that everybody has the same understanding and is approaching this in the same way. I do have a meeting with all of our Grey County CAOs tomorrow morning, and I will be talking all of what's proposed in the bylaw through with them tomorrow. There are penalties proposed in the bylaw for not wearing a face covering, for tampering with the information, or failing to post signage or other offenses. Ticket fines if you're not going to object to the fine, then what we're saying here is that you would be on a first offense be charged $100 for not wearing a face mask. And other compliance orders and injunctions are also available, and I'll let Michael take us into that in more detail if you wish in closed. So that's what I have so far. A lot of work's been done, both with our legal, with the health unit, the health unit's legal, and with the staff at Bruce County. We really want to make this as straightforward as we can for the public and for our enforcement personnel. If you have any specific questions, I'm happy to take them now, or I know Michael can give you some additional advice around enforcement if you so wish, but we should go into close to do that.
Okay, thanks, Madam CEO. So I guess at this point, in the sense of general questions, we can take general questions at this point.
That's correct.
Yeah, and if there's legal questions, then you're saying maybe we need to go in camera. So I see Councillor Mackey. There's probably a whole bunch. I will not try to miss anybody, Madam Clerk. Is there somebody who went first, or?
Councillor Millen, Mackey, and Robinson.
Okay, I wrote those down, and I do see the chat sometimes too. You can always flip them up there as well. So, okay, we'll go to Councillor Millen first.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Tim, the one, I think it was the last one you had up on the screen there, a failure to post signage. Is that a generic sign to say, mask is required upon entry, or what type of signage are we talking about? Or is it sufficient to tell people when they come in that they must have a mask on?
It's my understanding that that signage should be posted. Like, I mean, that's a piece of paper on the doorway, at the entryway, that advises people so that they're aware before they come in to the business. We have proposed language for that signage, if that's useful to folks. They don't have to try and make it up on their own.
Wear a mask isn't good enough. Councillor Millen?
I thought it was a little I don't know, odd that the starting fine proposed is higher for not having the sign than it is for not wearing the mask. But anyway, that's fine. You've answered my question. Thank you.
Do you have a follow-up on that, Madam CEO?
No, I think that's a place where we might want to involve Michael for some comments there. Yeah.
I'll make a note of that. Okay, and so you're saying, Madam CEO, we keep a track, and if there's a number of points that we need to get some further,
Yes.
then we'll. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll keep track there. Maybe you will as well. Councillor Mackey is next then.
Thanks, Mr. Warden, and thanks Kim and Michael for all the work on this. I know it's not easy. My only struggle from what I've seen is the possible responsibility of an individual store owner, putting up the signs, completely agree with. But for an individual store owner or for a teenage person working in a store to have to ask a person to put on a mask or leave, people should clearly know that they're expected to wear a mask. I just think we're setting up those individuals that are working in stores if they're having to take on some sort of a policing component to this bylaw. So I'm concerned about that part.
Oh, I understand and I share those concerns. Certainly, I remember when my own kids were working the counter at some sort of a service area. It's not an easy thing at all for them to be able to do that, and we don't want to put them in a bad or a dangerous situation. I think I've heard Dr. Era say that as well, that we don't want anybody to be putting themselves in a risky situation because of this. So that's why the signage is there to tell people what to do. Staff can only ask people or remind people, but beyond that, I think then at that point now you're looking at notifying someone if you feel it's important to get some additional assistance. Or, and it may be that you are going to end up serving that person and then dealing with the fact that, you need to make a complaint about their behavior after the fact. That may be the least risky way to handle that.
So Kim, based on those comments, could we remove the verbiage about the responsibility of the shop owner or their employee to, put the sign up, but that's where their requirements end? It would be up to them to determine. Right now, though, it's written into the bylaw that there's an expectation. I'd like to see that expectation removed, but that's my thoughts. Thanks.
No, that's good. So let's talk about that some more. I will keep that.
Okay, thanks for that, Councillor Mackey. And then I have Councillor Robinson.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Warden, I too share the concern as it's proposed currently that the shop owners would take the obligation and the responsibility for individuals attending into their store to wear a mask. So if there's an opportunity to rework that draft section so that the onus does not fall on the shopkeepers, I would very much appreciate that. Certainly through this time period, I've received a number of comments from shopkeepers, and that certainly is of concern to many. So if there's an ability to put the onus and the responsibility on all of us, rather than focus on the owners of various businesses, that would be appreciated. I also wonder if there's an ability to have a very consistent signage similar to the no smoking sign, no vaping sign. Is there an opportunity for stickers to be produced for our businesses and various, even our municipalities? So I put that as a thought to take a look at. And I just wanted to ensure that staff and local police services through our chiefs were able to comment on the draft bylaw, as I know you will. And thank you very much for this, Madam CAO.
Any comments there, Madam CEO? Or
No, certainly. I think the assistance with signage, which is something that we did earlier on when the pandemic began, and it seemed to be very well received. So I would be speaking to economic development again and see if we can't do that. If the belief that we're likely to be in this situation probably, for another year, perhaps, it seems like it would be a useful and supportive thing for the business community. And I do, economic development is so dear to my heart. I really do take your comments about, not wanting to put the business owners, especially small business owners, in a very difficult and awkward situation. So maybe if we could go into close, Mr. Warden, and I'll let Michael make some comments of clarification, because there's been an awful lot of conversation that's gone into this.
Okay, thank you, Madam CEO. I just want to make sure there's no other questions before we go in, Madam Clerk.
There are two, Councillor Soever and Councillor Keaveney.
Okay, let's get those first, Madam CEO, just to make sure. And if there are questions that need to go on camera, then they can broad further into that. Okay, Councillor Soever.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Warden. Yeah, I'm just wondering, I think this is a great idea to have a bylaw. Certainly it allows enforcement, and we don't know what the province is going to do. I'm just wondering whether it would be a good idea, since we're putting in place a bylaw, to include the rules on gatherings, and so we're able to enforce those a little more strenuously. Particularly, it's become obvious that some people are organizing gatherings in opposition to the safety measures. And I'd hate to see all the hard work that our citizens have put in keeping us safe derailed by somebody who says, well, I don't care, I'm going to organize a party. And, you know, at least at that level, I'm not saying that we're going to go around and break up everything, but if somebody willfully organizes, you know, a gathering, you know, and first we'd try to educate, but it would be nice to have that enforcement capability if the person says, well, I don't care, and gives, you know, just says, I'll do what I want. And because we don't know, the province, obviously they've extended their opening for another 4 weeks. You know, it'll be interesting to see what happens, because when they remove their state of emergency, a lot of these things may go by the wayside, and then we'll have to scramble to figure out how we enforce things to keep our communities safe.
Okay, I'll keep that.
Okay. Thank you for that. Councillor Keaveney.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and certainly I can speak firsthand, and I appreciate the comments from Councillors Mackey and Robinson in relation to small businesses, because yes, I'm living that life every day and working with teenagers. And my recommendation to them is always, if anyone is not wearing a mask and causes any concern whatsoever to the staff, to call the OPP non-emergency number right away. But of course, the OPP can't possibly get to an establishment like mine in time to deal with anyone. They're in and out and gone. I realize there is a cost to the signage, but I do think it's important to provide a consistent signage. I know that would be a message from our recovery task force. They've been very diligent in handing out signage and floor stickers and masks and sanitizer and all those sorts of things to our businesses. And I think it would be great if the signage could be consistent and could speak to the fines, so that people are aware that there is a consequence for not complying with this bylaw. So I'll leave that with you, Madam CAO. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a good suggestion.
Thank you, Councillor Keaveney. I think Councillor Robinson, you had one little follow-up before we go on camera.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and very quick, I do appreciate you acknowledging me. Just wondering if there may be situations where shopkeepers may not be able to wear a mask. And I'm just looking for consideration within the language as well, through the bylaw. But certainly, as this discussion is unfolding, I think that is a possibility as well. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk, are there any other questions before we go in camera?
No, sir.
Just a comment to you, Madam CEO, before we go in. Somewhere around the Hollywood Squares, I'm going to call it. Maybe remember back when the no smoking bylaw came in, I think it was in '99. And I know there was a bylaw from the county. I think it was bylaw something 99, and it sort of listed the bylaw. It may be stuck on some community centers back doors yet. I'm not sure, but I have seen the odd one. But it did spell out the bylaw and it's spelled out the fine, and it was a sticker thing that sort of was out there. And I guess maybe for that shop owner, I guess they could, if there was like a routine or a sticker system that was across the county, then everybody could point at that sticker and say, there's the sticker, and then people start to see the uniformity of that. And I don't know if we have any information from anybody in the past when that bylaw came out, because that was before the province passed the no smoking bylaw back in 2003. So the county had that, I think, in 99. And I guess the thing is the enforcement back then, if there was an establishment that people were smoking in a business, how was that dealt with? And maybe there's some history that we could draw on ourselves, and maybe to you, Michael, there may be some past archival stuff, or maybe somebody who was here at that time could share some of that information as well. So to sort of see how that rolled out, because that was sort of a controversial thing at the time when that all came into play as well. And then I think originally the province realized that it was going to go across the board. So just as an FYI on that part for sure. Okay, so I need a mover and a seconder to go in camera, please, with regards to the item that is listed in our agenda. So Councillor Robinson, I'm just taking what I see on my screen, and do I have a seconder?
Councillor Burley.
Councillor Burley. Councillor Potter, did you have a question before we went in? I saw something pop up there on the screen.
I did, but I think it'd probably be best if we do it in camera, because it is probably a question for Michael.
All right, so then just for the viewing public, we are going in camera for advice subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communication necessary for the purpose of litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipalities or a local board. And so any discussion on going in camera? That's been moved in second. All in favor? That is carried. Just from the viewing public, are we looking at maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes, Madam CEO?
I don't anticipate this will be long, no.
Okay.
5 minutes.
So, Mr. Warden, the following staff will remain, the CAO,